Everybody, today is our commission workshop on general government budgets for Wednesday, May 17th. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, our first item is the adoption of the agenda. So moved.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as printed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Our business discussion item for today is 2023-494 FY 2024 general government budget, with the recommendation that the City Commission hear budget presentations from the charter officers and staff.
Madam Manager.
Mr. Mayor and members of the commission, on the general government side, we have presentations today from the charters and then from the Gainesville Police Department. Our first meeting, we shared with the commission a general overview of our revenues and our expenditures to date, and we, of course, discussed the fire assessment fee. But today we will go into a little bit more detail on the budgets for the charters, and then after that we'll have a presentation on the Gainesville Police Department's budget and where we are to date. These are not final. These are just, working numbers that we have worked through. Still a lot of time for revision, but we want to keep the commission apprised of where we are to date.
Excellent. Thank you.
And of course, Mr. Varvell is our acting Office of Management and Budget Director, and he will start our presentations today. I think the first one up is the City Attorney.
Welcome, Mr. Marvell.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission. Steve Varvell, Acting Director, Office of Management and Budget. So let's go ahead and start with this introductory slide, just kind of remind you where we are and what we're here to do today, although I think the City Manager gave a much quicker and more concise description. So next slide. We're going to look at the charters in alphabetical order. I didn't do it by my favorite charter officer down to the least favorite. Attorney, auditor, city clerk, city commission, city manager. I love you, Zariah, you know that. So, and the Office of Equity and Inclusion. Alphabetical was the best way to do it. And then we're going to go with have GPDs, which will include a summary of where we are with the Department of Juvenile Justice. Okay. Next slide. Here we are on May 17th, just to kind of give you a forward-looking thing on the 25th, forward-looking budget process. On the 25th, we'll be here to talk about largely the operational delivery departments in general government. And then on June 14th, we'll talk about the administrative and support services and have a wrap-up of where we are and a summary of what we've done. Okay? 15th is when you'll set the preliminary fire assessment, maximum millage on the 20th of July. Then we have another budget workshop, which will be the wrap, include all funds budgets to go over those. And then you have your two public hearings in September. So next slide.
Steve, if I might interject.
Sure.
So we are contacting your offices as we speak to try to get another at least hour and a half or so meeting with each commissioner on the fourth floor, so we can do some more wrap up and a little bit more information shared in those meetings on the fourth floor. So we're working on those for hopefully next week or the following.
So every general government department went through the same continuous improvement review committee, and GPD was part of that. Charter officers, that's not true. City manager put herself through it. We did not require or request that the other charters do because it is their budget. But that's just a reminder that we did that. All right, next slide. And I believe we go right to the city attorney, and Dan asked me to go through the numbers. He's here to answer questions. All right, bring up the city attorney presentation, please. I'm sorry, Mr. Mead. All right. Next slide. All right, the city attorney actually has multiple funding sources. They do direct charge certain aspects of their office based on the service provided to a functional area. The general fund does make up the largest portion of their funding, and it's about 10 3/4 Somehow we got 0.76. That's outstanding. They have half an attorney out of the community redevelopment agency who works specifically on their legal issues. The general insurance fund, which is our third-party tort claim fund and workers' comp, the litigation staff is paid for out of that fund and has been for years. And then there is a small portion of our labor and employment attorney assigned to the general pension. She reviews and helps draft pension ordinance changes, and when we have questions from our members that aren't real clear in the plan, we go to her for input and advice. Excuse me. In his budget, in the city attorney's budget, they did eliminate a legal assistant 2 that's currently vacant. And what you see in the increase is really related to personnel service cost increases and health insurance increases. So it's all in the salary and benefits. He did cut some of the administrative in general, and it was based on, Dan, you please correct me if I'm wrong, he took a look at a 5-year history of what they've spent and brought the budget more in line with what they're actually spending over that time. So that is the summary of the city attorney's budget.
Do you have any questions about the city attorney's budget? It's a good opportunity for that. Commissioner Eastman.
I have questions for each person's budget. I went through, I didn't quite know how to wrap my head around this particular one because, one, we have a lot of responsibility, I think, for some of these smaller charters. It's not directly under the city manager's office, and so as it relates to budget cuts and the budgets, I feel like we kind of have to take more of a firm hand in the discussions on this. And so what I did is just looked at what the budgets looked like in 2013, what they looked like in 2023, how much those budgets went up, and then try to figure out what kind of FTEs everyone was looking at. This is actually quite an easy one because I was the attorney, but as I look at it, you in 2013 had 1.7 million in your budget. In 2023, that's now 1.6 million. So you are the only charter that has actually reduced their budget over the last 10 years, which seems quite, impressive, frankly. I don't know how exactly that occurred, but it's an easy starting point to start with you.
Sure. And Mr. Mayor, you want me to stay here, or how do you want
This is
to
fine.
operate? Yeah, I think that it's nice to be Mr. Barbell's favorite and to hear praise from, we should have a sash of some sort from Commissioner Eastman. I suspect a lot of that decrease might be in the ability for us to properly share those personnel and specifically attorney expenses with other funds. I can tell you that as your law office, our functions don't change based upon directions given to us. We represent the city in all facets, including the utility, and we divide that by attorneys who specialize in a variety of areas. Everyone are sort of generalists who cross-train with each other, but litigation, utilities, procurement, public safety, planning and development, labor and employment, complex contract review. We have attorneys with us who specialize in all of that. And we are really blessed to have a great deal of experience and length of tenure in those positions right now. Functionally, that is, as I said, as a blessing. It also underscores where our major expenses go. It's personnel. So given that, I think a lot of we try to keep our expenses. We are very mindful of the budget, and we are responsive when the functions of our clients, and our clients are all of the departments throughout the organization, when they gather new functions, then obviously it's our job to be responsive and to assist with that, to counsel and represent. But we're mindful, obviously, of our budget at the same time. So a lot of that decrease might just be in the splitting throughout the funds. What I ended up focusing on a lot in this process was the non-personnel part, which is almost like the tail wagging the dog. It is a very small percentage, but I do think we're in a time to follow the lead of the manager and the general manager to pursue a zero-based or a ground-up type look at all of our expenses, and that's what we tried to do. And we look back at these actual expenses going back multiple years. being mindful that actual expenses in the last 2 or 3 years aren't necessarily indicative, because there were a lot of expenses that, while worthwhile and valuable, we haven't been able to travel to conferences and participate in seminars and other, and even litigation expenses such as trials took a significant dip during that time because we weren't gathering. Depositions weren't being done in person, even though it is valuable to be able to sit across from your witnesses. So we look back merely at 2017, 2018, 2019, and we tried to cut those non-personnel expenses as much as we could. And we accomplished, I think, a 12.6% decrease in those. But when combined with the progression in salaries, again, because we are fortunate, I think we have 5 attorneys with more than 20 years experience as attorneys in our office. That's what makes my job so much easier, is being able to rely on them. And I think you all know that. We've gone through that, fortunate we are in that regard. So we're at an overall, I think, increase over last year's budget of, I think, 2.2%. So it's not helping, obviously, entirely with the budget situations that we're in, but being mindful of that personnel is, we are, with that increased tenure, we're able to try to limit any sort of expansion in numbers of bodies, but we are getting great value from what we have. I'm not sure if that answers your question or what the question was.
It wasn't even a question. I want to pose it to each one of them. But are there any unfilled FTEs currently that are in your office?
Yeah, my old position is still sitting vacant. That's funded, I think, almost entirely through risk, not your general fund. Okay. And we were holding off on pursuing that to see, because there was some concern the legislature looked as if they were threatening to make some real changes regarding sovereign immunity caps. And that might have changed our response organizationally to whether different insurance products might have been necessary, and that might have changed our approach to that representation. That went by the wayside, and in fact, I think the legislative actions reinforced, alleviated my concern greatly that the legislature is going to have a change of heart and start being more pro-litigant, pro-plaintiff. Now, we are still trying to see how we can function with as spare a staff as possible. And part of that is because, again, we have we've gained such an experience in our non-traditional litigation attorneys that a lot of what we're able to accomplish is by spreading the litigation out a bit. Our labor and employment lawyer, Ms. Martin, she's very effective in handling a great deal of the litigation, along with some outside counsel. That's a change in her function that really her predecessors didn't engage in as much. With our planning and development, it's been a good experience, I think, to see those lawyers, Mr. McDermott in particular and Ms. Mokler as well, being able to actually put in place a lot of the changes that they make at your direction in working with the planning staff in administrative litigation type situations. So we've been able to, we've gone to a more specialized approach with relying on outside counsel with police liability cases. And I don't mean tort liability like car accidents. I mean Section 1983 civil rights type cases where Mr. Franklin has a great deal of experience in constitutional civil rights, especially employment law type litigation, federal court type litigation. So he's able to really work well with the outside counsel to try to maximize every litigation dollar we have, and it spreads it out a bit. So I guess that's a very, very, very long-winded way of saying that we're trying to keep our personnel costs in check as much as possible, recognizing that as we go forward and we start to lose more experienced attorneys to life, to seeking retirement and so forth. Now we have Mr. Schwartz is coming up, I think, and he's warned me that in about a year or so, and he handles many of our complex contractual matters that he'll be, well, he says he's going to be retiring. We'll try to talk him out of it. But as we get less experienced lawyers in, then it may require more or less experienced lawyers to do what he's able to accomplish, for example. But it will still be our goal to keep maintaining as budget-conscious approach as possible.
Yeah, those are my only questions. I just wanted to ask that to all the charters, and I think I just want to remind everyone that these are administrative in total. So what worries me is that we're going to get to the May 25th budget discussions where we're talking about parks, recreation, and cultural affairs, housing, development, those sort of things that are more services that we provide to the community. I think a lot of them mean a lot to us, and that the more we kind of press and ask kind of questions about these administrative costs, which are more internal, that that we will see less of cuts within those services that we provide to our community, all of which is very important. Administration is really important to keep our city running. I don't really have a lot more questions just because I've seen it looks like the budgets have been pretty well kept in check over at the attorney's office. And so I don't have any more questions, but that's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Book.
I think you and I hit our buzzers, Commissioner Willis, at the same time. You want me to, it was like a race to the light.
That's all right. Go ahead.
So I'm going to have similar questions, Mr. Mayor, that I think Commissioner Eastman just had, and it really focuses on the personnel side for our charters that have less staff under them, Mr. City Attorney. Typically, when you talk about personnel costs, those are almost always between 78 and 83% of an organization. Yours is higher. So what that means is that there's less wiggle room to deal with budget. And that's problematic for us when we're trying to get to 19 million plus. So my questions just deal with the personnel also, and the research that you did, Commissioner Eastman, was not a way I looked at it, so that was helpful also, so thank you for that. The assistant, the position that you vacated, explain again that, so there's 2 or 3, and I'll just give them so you can provide them all. Tell me a little bit more about that position. Are we eliminating it? Are we freezing it? What are we doing? And then what's our nexus as it relates to GRU services and legal services, I think is really, really important. Also, I think you started to touch on that, but I wanted to know a little bit about that. And then the last question related to personnel deals with what members of your, that report to you or under your purview are in bargaining units. So I know we're expecting some raises that probably deal with potentially bargaining unit individuals that are already expected, and there's, those are done through a bargaining system. So thank you.
I'm sorry, what was the second question, Mr. Book?
So assistant city attorney was the first one, it was the position you vacated. The second one dealt with the nexus to GRU and any services that might be provided there from the legal.
Well, in terms of the position that's being eliminated, it was a legal assistant position that it's been a change, really, I think, in the practice of law in general, but specifically I can tell you about in our office over the last 20 years, where it is much less automation, ease with computers, e-filing. There's much less demand upon administrative help. We've always had legal assistants who, I would say 20, 30 years ago, were more secretarial in nature. We don't have secretaries anymore. We have professional legal assistants who are able to work independently. And when it comes to typing briefs, that's not done through dictation anymore as it was 20 years ago. When it comes to the more administrative and clerical functions, there's needs of doing that. So being mindful of that, our support professionals are able to focus on more substantive work, not to denigrate clerical or administrative work. But we have 8 attorneys presently, I think, and 5 support staff. One of the support staff is used to be back, how long, Monique's probably been gone, 8 to 10 years, was a true office manager position, where that person had supervisory authority over the staff and over the operations of the office itself. We went away from that position. All the management goes directly to my office, but we do have a position still that really manages the office functions. And that's all the ordering, that's the handling, processing leave, that's processing travel, that's facilities matters, all the functions it takes to operate an office itself, short of supervising people. So in addition to that person, we have 4 legal assistants, and of which I think 3 have, I think 3 of them have advanced certification in paralegal type studies. So we're very fortunate to have quite a lot of experience there as well. As to GRU, we provide, GRU is a fictional name for the utility services of the city. We provide full legal representation to them as well. One of the attorneys in our office is, I think, funded directly by the utility, so that's not in our general fund mix here. But is that fair to say? I may have the accounting.
It's in your
process.
general fund, but it
Okay.
gets reimbursed by GRU annually
So,
for what we spend on it, so.
so as term, the accounting I'm off on, but I think that the substantive part of it then is correct. And then obviously a great deal of my time is spent as well with this important function of our city and through, bond closings and general counsel and assisting them where we can and helping to interact with outside counsel that they have in some very, very specialized areas. What was the third part of your question, Commissioner?
The third party dealt with what are your staff for in bargaining units, so we already have some expected raises and increases that are in the scope of salary and benefits.
The attorneys are all MAPS positions, the staff are CWA.
How many staff are not in a bargaining unit in one of our 7 bargaining?
None. We have 8 attorneys and 4 legal assistants, from legal assistant 2 to senior legal assistants, and 1 executive assistant senior who, again, is sort of supervises the office workings, and they're all CWA positions, all 5 of those.
Thank you. So I don't want to dominate the time, and the colleagues may have some questions also. I will say that across the board, to try and get to 19 million is going to require cuts across every charter. And how we get to that is going to be difficult and different depending upon the staff size. But it typically deals, when you deal with decrements, you deal with programs first, because those are things that are typically external to the agency or funded by grants, and so some of them remain. Then it's the services, which was alluded to. Then it's vacancies, and then you're in your last line of defense is actual people in positions. And that's what we do not want to get to, or you do at the last line. So to the extent that you don't have much, Mr. City Attorney, in the way of programs and services that are funded separately, but I would expect that at kind of the senior level and the charter levels, we're going to have to go backward in costs, period, to get to 19 million. And that's what I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for the answers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of my questions was about the bargaining unit. So it sounds like you have 8 attorneys that are not in bargaining units, 5 staff members that are in bargaining units. The eliminated legal assistant 2 would have been one of those positions in a bargaining unit. What was the 2023 salary or wage for that legal assistant 2?
It wasn't filled in 2023. We've been about.
What was the advertised? I'm sure it's a range, but
What is the legal assistant 2 pay range? I can look it up. I don't have it with me. I suspect it's probably. No,
She's looking, Laura's.
my guess is it's probably between 50 and 80 is the range.
I might be able to help you.
Good afternoon, Laura Gretz, HR Director. I apologize. So the question was, legal assistant 2 salary
Legal assistant
range?
2, yes.
Legal assistant 2 salary range, the minimum is 52,000, mid-market or midpoint is 64,642.50, and the max is 77,285.
I said 50 to 80. That was pretty close.
not too bad, not too bad. Thank you. I wanted to ask about that because as we look forward, as we go forward, the position. Now, granted, this is not someone's not losing their job, but it's a position not filled. To Commissioner Easton's point, where we starting here, so that when we get to other things, one of my concerns is going to be, of course, as Mr. Book said, or Commissioner Book said, you start with vacancies, but I am concerned that all the cuts when it comes to either vacancies or actual layoffs are going to come at the bottom, and I do have a basic kind of principled aversion to that practice because the people at the bottom typically they need that salary, they really do, and that kind of government employment really undergirds a lot of our community. So it is a concern of mine. Obviously, this is a vacancy, and that's the easiest place to start. So that's definitely one of my concerns. And I think that answers. And this is going from basically one FTE down from 11.76 to 10.76, which is just that one. So answering my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Willetts, Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you for, I think just to, after handling, I think it was like my fourth budget, just a quick clarification for my colleagues. Eliminating services eliminates jobs because services are not handled by Santa's elves, they are handled by people. So if we start cutting services, you are inherently cutting jobs. So I don't want anyone to think that just services cutting is just money we can save. Those are people who would lose their jobs because their job is no longer being performed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Sacco. I don't see any more lights for the city attorney's budget, so let's move on to the next one.
Next up is the city auditor.
Welcome, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Brecca Anderson, Interim City Auditor. If I knew Steve was doing intros, okay. I could have gotten Mr. Varvel to do that, but we will take it from here. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm glad I have my copy here because I cannot see that. All right, so the city auditor's office, I did drop a one-sheet document for you all to peruse later on when you get a chance, and it includes some information about our office and what we do, how, of course, we provide independent and objective auditing services for the city. We are the cornerstone of public sector governance, and how we are charged with the task of ensuring that we are accountable of public funds. And so we do have 7 professionals in our office. We currently have 5. We have 7 FTE, but we have 5 filled positions currently. My position, the position that I hold right now, in terms of city auditor position, of course, is kind of considered vacant because I will be going back down to assistant city auditor once we have a city auditor identified. And then we have several professionals in our office. We have an audit manager who has 15 years of experience as an internal audit director. We have an IT audit manager who's been an auditor and led in audits and actually once owned a consulting company. She's conducting audits and she's been doing that for a couple of decades as well. We also have 2 relatively newer auditors that we were able to thankfully identify from within the city of Gainesville. And so they are training and identifying their CPE right now. Their certifications and building. And so we're glad to be able to hire from within as well. So our proposed budget is $993,045 for this year, for fiscal year 24. That does include for all 7 FTE. We do have the other vacant position is the senior auditor position, which is a position that I did not submit it for. It is on freeze. It is frozen. I'd also like to mention that I had gone through the process to also add a position I think that was around February, but during the Finance Committee meeting, decided to not fill the position because of the budgetary constraints, and that would have made us have 8 FTE, so did not complete that process because of the budgetary constraints. You're not going to see that in the figures, okay? So what we're looking at is that with salary and benefits, of course, we have the $923,000. We're about 7% for anything that's A&G and O&M. It's going to be around 7% for us. And one key note, we did do some cuts in O&M. Actually, in O&M, what you're going to see here, we did do a cut in equipment maintenance, and then as well. Let's see. Also, we have in A&G, we do have where we did the zero-based budgeting, which I thought was wonderful, and we were able to identify some cost savings in that, and we're able to save dollars related to our copier expenses, about $1,200, related to our dues and memberships and publications that cut in half. That was about $2,300. Office supplies went down $1,600. Well, it went down, excuse me, that figure's not correct. It's $2,700 down to $900. So yes, so $1,800. And then postage expense stayed the same. And we also have a line item there that is important. It is for professional services for anytime we provide services to the city where additional expertise or just hands are needed to complete the audit or consultation. So that is also, that remains in the budget. One thing about our office, I know a lot of people, sometimes with internal audit, I didn't know what it was. When I first started studying about it as a young person, I've been here since 2008, except for a year, and kind of grew up here in the city in the internal audit office. We do conduct internal audits. Management consultations, we do that. We come in and we talk about, okay, let's look at what you want to do, how you want to do it better. We provide that. Investigations, special requests. We support management and identifying risks. You're not going to see that as a project, but there are oftentimes I'm in the meetings with charter officers, helping out with anytime there's a risk, to identify any risk in any program or anything they're doing. And I appreciate them inviting us to those talks. Audit issue follow-up. We follow up to ensure and to help management with completing that. Ethics training, of course, we have that once a year for the city commissioners and our management, as provided by Gray from the Florida Ethics Commission. And we're instituting benchmarking controls more in our audits to ensure that we have a perspective when we provide our recommendations. Let's see. And of course, we did receive the pass rating as well. So that's what our numbers look like. Do we have any questions?
We do. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Just as a quick question, if you have the number, if you don't, it's okay. I know that it says the number of engagements and issues and hotline investigations you did close out. I know sometimes things carry over because things are just reset. Do you know, I guess, total number of issues or cases that were open, either substantiated, unsubstantiated? We didn't do much more than closed means one thing versus like still ongoing.
Closed means all of it.
Okay.
So if there's something that does overlap, but this was not finished for that year, then it would overlap. So yes, there would be some from the year before and then some that remained after that. So in hotline cases, sometimes they come into our office and they're not for our office, but we still direct them to HR. So we included that we, we aided with that as well. And also we go to OEI at times.
So just to be very transparent, you log it, like we did get it, it was not for us, we transferred it and we closed it.
Yes, HR has access to our case management system and they complete the projects within our case management system.
Thank you for being
we
a
work
team.
closely with them.
Thank you for being a team player.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sacco. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you, and thank you for all your years of service to us, Ms. Anderson, and thank you for everything that your staff does. I know the auditor's office is not necessarily the sexiest part of government, but it makes sure that everything else is working and moving forward, and it's and holds everyone accountable so that we do have an efficient government. I did want to ask you. So as I said, I would ask each person. In 2013, it looks like your budget was $489,000, and it's now up to $989,000. So it's about doubled in the past 10 years. Is that mostly FTEs or what accounts for that increase?
It would be mostly FTE. I was here, so we probably, I'm guessing off the top of my head exactly, but we probably had 4 FTE at that time.
Okay.
And then just the general cost of what the salary is worth. Internal audit is, I know all of the auditors in town. We all know each other. So it's not a discipline where you can actually kind of, sometimes we're able to home grow auditors like we're doing now, and it's been really beneficial, but a lot of times it's hard to get auditors, internal auditors as well. So yes, you're correct.
So I mean, all the work that you guys do are really important, and so I hate to, but I do think we need to go back and try to look at where cuts can be made. You mentioned you had an open FTE. I would say that that's probably an important starting point here, and that everyone else, of course, is filled currently, but because I have seen a significant increase from over the last 10 years, I think that this would probably be a place where we should start looking at that. But so I guess that's really my only feedback here is look at trying to hold off on that FTE filling, and then probably move forward from there. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Commissioner Eastman, for looking back that far. That is a wide spectrum of looks. What I would add, though, Rebecca's been here longer than any of us, so whatever. But because I've seen the slow increase of some of those FTEs, a lot of it was prior commissions asking the auditor's office, what do you need to work more efficiently?
Yes.
And it really became I do not have enough auditors. And I think the IT specialist one was especially one that we needed because we just didn't have any, and outsourcing it was, for an organization as complex as ours, with as many IT matters and a utility, it was not recommended that we continue without that kind of position. So I hear you, but I think that's where we had been, put us where we are. And it's one of those that I would hesitate strongly to touch, just because I think we've all seen where it lands us when we don't have enough auditors for several years. I know that you are looking at that one senior position to see what to do, where to go, in what direction, similar to the city attorney, of what to do with that one position. I think if we come to the end of it, when we're looking at numbers, and those positions are being frozen at the moment, and when we come to it at the closer to the end of the cycle of our budget cycle, it's like we need to, then we can have that conversation. But I have no problem holding it as frozen as of now, because I've seen what happens when we don't have the auditor's office. I won't say fully staffed, I'll say adequately staffed, because it was fully staffed before. That didn't mean it was as adequately staffed as it should have been. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I think you said that you're funded for 7, but you're operating at 5, and 1 is frozen. So you're operating really at a deficit. This is an office we cannot afford to have operate at a deficit. So I would have difficulty in cutting a position. I think that I know you got caught in the hiring freeze we implemented, but it seems to me that you probably you have an essential service that needs to go forward.
Yes.
So you
Yes.
need to get that person engaged. I think that, we have learned what happens when you don't have a fully functioning auditor. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In that line, having grown in FT over the years, is some of that from identified, new needs? It's a new world, right? We continue to progress on the IT end or whatever. And was some of that from truly new needs, or just from kind of being understaffed, or was it kind of new needs? And what would, I don't want to get into a full review of the status of the industry, but what were some of those kind of new needs?
So I would say it would be a mixture. Also, as the city has grown, the municipality has grown, and then so that means the risk has grown, which leads to the need being there. So some of the challenges we had, some of the things is that we receive a whole lot of special requests at times from management and from the commission, and we are happy to do so. And in doing that, a lot of times that cuts costs from having to go outside the city. Like if we're looking at something and we need an attestation for us to attest figures, or for us to take a look at something and opine on it independently, then we're able to provide that, and that's not us going out and getting a consultant for $25,000. So that's one reason why we're like, okay, it would be great to have another person, and they can aid and support the service, our office for the whole time, the core service, the whole year instead of once. Not knocking consultants, because they're great as well, but it's great to have inside staff who can actually conduct the business. Yes, and the risk is high. As IT auditor, as you mentioned, the IT audit manager is here. And we all know that risk is very high in IT. So that's just something we have to have. She's already employed. We also have the senior auditor position, which we can hire as an IT or senior auditor position. It will be reporting to the IT audit manager, and they will support that.
Okay. And so you mentioned it, and when we're talking about many years change, that just more employees, more city staff, because some of what you do, I don't want to say you're investigating every individual, but in essence, the number of P cards that are out there, the number of employees in all these units, all of their interactions, every time they have a finger in systems, in essence, that does grow your work, right?
That is correct. Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We do have the investigations as well, which have increased significantly over the years. It kind of comes in swells, but with those that takes, we have standards we have to follow, so we have to follow the process. That also has increased it. As you have more systems, the IT audit manager is currently engaged in an IT risk assessment, which takes several months to complete, where we actually get a universe of what's all in the city. So just kind of imagine that, and then identify the risk that's out there to try to keep us protected, so we won't get fined and won't have breaches. And it's all to support management and to help management with their operations. We're here to add value.
Okay, and my last, maybe a comment about, well, I have two comments. One is that if there is obviously unneeded past direction from commissions that's a little red tapish, that is no longer necessary, by all means, always be sure to tell us, and tell us where you think things have changed, where certain things may not be necessary anymore. The same way as there are new requirements, there are perhaps antiquated, direction from the commission. And the other one I do want to make mention is that we need to remember that not all problems come from not having enough great auditors, but sometimes there are not enough highly qualified CPAs, and so I do want to make sure we acknowledge that past issues are not always just because we didn't catch something on the audit side. Some of it's because we didn't manage things properly on the finances, by having lots and lots of really highly qualified and attentive CPAs. But thank you for your work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Auditor. Your fiscal year 24 proposed, I would assume that the figure for salaries and benefits, that includes filling the two positions? Would that be the figure if those two positions were filled?
That is correct. That's if it's filled.
So
Yes, sir.
given if they were frozen, perhaps the HR director yourself can tell us what's that potentially salary budget savings?
I can actually tell you. I have that with me. The city auditor position, just now, I'm not, we'll have to have a city auditor, absolutely. That position, I would not consider the assistant city auditor position, because of course I would be going back down to it, and then the city auditor position, we will need a city auditor. But the senior auditor position, it is estimated, this is, let me see. Yes, this is a permanent full-time, which includes payroll, taxes, life insurance, health insurance, workers' comp, and retirement. Is $88,000 for the auditors. Excuse me, it's $88,000 for the auditor senior. That's the estimate.
All right, so
And
I would agree with a couple of my colleagues that auditing positions are highly specialized. It's a very difficult field in professional development to teach to others. Probably the best thing is some of the government bureaucratic processes that deal with procedure and process is actually our best defense, even though it also slows us down in efficiency and effectiveness. But in this particular case, I think you alluded to it, Commissioner Rhodes, is we have to have folks across the organization that are really enforcing our existing protocols, because that negates some of the capabilities that we may need on the auditor side. Because the process is already sound and the auditor's office has already established that. My main thing just simply dealt with the salary, and if that position is frozen, this budget is automatically some percentage on the negative as opposed to the positive.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Madam Auditor.
May I also address one more thing? Thank you. Mr. Mayor, thank you. There was also another line item, excuse me, where we had an increment that we requested, like fiscal year 21 or 22, for our computer services. It was supposed to be like a recurring increment, so it wasn't in there. So that's also what took us up $26,000. So we would actually come in below, because that had to be added back this time, because like, hey, this isn't in here. We don't have that budgeted. And since it wasn't in the budget, it had to be added back, and that was $26,000. So if it wasn't for that as well, we would be under. But it's just a process thing that happens, and that covers our work paper management system and any of our licenses, like the license for us to enter GRU's ERP system, so on and so forth. They all come with a cost for us as auditors.
That's Mr. Mayor, so that's. That was added basically under recurring information that should have been there proceeding, going back about 2 fiscal years. Then.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, I see no more lights for the auditor's budget, so unless you had anything else to add.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Varga.
believe the clerk is next, and Ms. Lynch is gonna present the clerk's budget. So
Very good.
you're the next contestant.
Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, Martha Lynch, Deputy City Clerk. Next slide, please. So on this slide, our FY24 proposed budget is listed at 1.539 million, as well as our 12 budgeted FTEs. Some of the services provided by the clerk's office include being the administrative arm of the city commission, maintaining historical archives of the city, supporting the commission with appointments, advisory boards and committees, and qualifying candidates for mayoral and city commission elections. Some of our metrics are also listed here. So for FY22, we digitized over 1 million pages of records, and this year we're on par, we're at 64,864 pages. So last year was our first attempt at digitizing, so that explains the large number. I won't go through all, but again, the metrics are listed there. Next slide, please. So for our general fund details for salaries and benefits for FY23, we had about 1.063 million, and for FY24 proposed 1.122 million. There's about a 5.5% change there due to anticipated increase to salary and benefits. For operations and maintenance, for FY23, we had 18,500, and we had a bit of a reduction there as well, about 28.04%. The same for administrative and general. We had a reduction there of around 14.76%, and those include reducing cost in advertising, transferring costs to the city commission's budget, so that's reflected accurately. So for your office supplies, your telephone, costs for running the city commission meetings, those are moved from the clerk's office over to the city commissions to reflect it correctly. Historically, we cover those costs, but in line with the zero-based budgeting and allotting funds where they are truly intended to be, or where they're, so in alignment with the zero-based budgeting and being, transparent, these are the costs that derive from the city commission operations. So for programs for FY23 and 24, our cost is $245,101, and that cost did not change across fiscal years. That's the cost for administering the city elections and what we pay to the supervisor of elections. So overall, there's a 1.72% change, or $26,062. Though we have some reductions in operations and maintenance and administrative in general, some of that was absorbed by the anticipated increase to salary and benefits. That concludes
Very good, thank you.
my overview for the clerk's office.
Commissioner Sacco.
Thank you, just as a question, as far as reducing the number of interns and overtime costs, are the interns that work in research, are their costs being switched to the commission expense?
No, it's not. So for the interns, they're not reflected here. I think we only reflect FTEs, correct me, Steve, but they're being reduced from 7 interns for this year to 4 for next year. So that reduction is about 15. It's about 15,000 plus. And then we also reduced our overtime costs that we incur due to meetings and so forth by a half. So we plan to mitigate staff usage of overtime and manage that properly to account for that reduction.
So you probably don't have the answer to this, but how do you think our meetings are not going to go over? Because if you have the answer, I'd love to know.
Great meeting management.
Great meeting management, and also enlisting staff that doesn't require that much use of overtime.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I don't see any other lights. Commissioner Eastman.
Thank you. Sandy, as I said, I do this for each one. So in 2013, I see that the budget for the city clerk was 625,000. That's now gone up to 1.5 million, so about 141% increase. Is that primarily FTEs, or what is that?
So it's primarily FTEs, so the policy administration program that's new, fairly new, so that was an addition, and something that I believe I'm answering as best as I can for the clerk, something that was requested of the commission at the time, so that definitely increased their cost. And then the addition of for agenda coordinator. So the agenda process, it's time consuming. Like one single agenda takes over 20 hours. So it wasn't a one person function. So we have the agenda coordinator, but we also have an executive assistant supporting that role.
Okay. And so those would be the main new, I guess, administrative growth costs. Is a new program essentially through the policy, and then the acknowledgement that these agendas take a bit more time.
Yes, and we also added a records coordinator.
Okay.
Again, that function is broad and supports the entire organization, and we had one person doing that. So now we have a records manager along with a coordinator supporting that function.
And you don't have any vacant FTEs at the moment?
We don't at the moment, but the idea is if we do, we'll reevaluate then and see where we can work with the resources that we have.
All right. Being that there's no FTEs, as I said, I know it's done by alphabetical order, but it's kind of ramped up in the amount of growth. Not to say the growth in budgets, not to say that there's not good reason for growth in budgets. As we talked about with the auditors, we've talked about with other things. A lot of these are places coming back that have been maybe cut during the recession, or new programs that have been allocated within there. But I would be curious how we looked operationally within the clerk's office about 10 years ago, and if we've seen increased efficiencies, or if there were problems that we solved by adding some of these FTEs. Because I'll point out to folks that when we get to the end of these series of slides, we are going to be coming up with a budget where we have to cut $18 million, but we will be $10 million more because of increases in salaries, mostly on the police and fire side of the budget. So we will actually be even further from our $18 million cuts that we need to make when we get to the final slide of this one. And so that's why I'm trying to give pushback to each one of the charters to see where we can make some more cuts. What I see here primarily is that the major cuts were essentially not necessarily cuts, but they're just kind of moving over into a different line item. Correct? It's there's about $5,000, but the entire admin in general, the $27,000, essentially just moving over into the city commission.
No, it's not. So we had reduction in our materials and supplies. We completely eliminated that line.
Okay.
Let me find the numbers. Okay, so for going through so for interns, we reduced the cost from about $35,700 to $20,400. Longevity, we reduced completely. That was around a little bit over $4,000 because we reevaluated, realized that we did not need that within the office anymore. For overtime, we cut that cost by half from $5,000 to about $2,500. For advertising expense, we cut that cost reduced that from $18,000 to $8,000 because some of those advertising expenses were transferred or passed on to the department. So in terms of sustainable development, they do a lot of their own advertising now. So we cut that budget there. And then for commission meetings, we essentially moved that cost, which is around $6,000. We moved that over to the commission's budget. For postage, we reduced that from $1,800 to $800. Telephone expenses, we cut that cost, but moved some over to your budget as well. For travel and training and conferences, we cut that by half as well, from $10,000 to about $5,000. So we did have cuts in there. It wasn't solely transfers.
All right. Thank you for that. All All right, those are all my questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How many of the clerk staff are in bargaining units?
Around half of them, so approximately, well, 6 that I'm starting off. There might be another one that I can check, but there's 6 bargaining.
Okay, I like to ask that because when we talk about salaries and benefits going up, that's definitely part of what we're expecting. On the records digitization, was this a one-time project or was this a long-term project? This is an every year you need to do $1 million, or is this a do some now, catch up when you can? Kind of where's that project in terms of the entire work of the clerk's office?
So it's ongoing. That first year was just getting us online because we weren't. So we have a document management software, Laserfish, that we enlist, but it's really digitizing all the records that we handle that we're able to digitize. So it's ongoing.
Do we expect the same kind of volume of work every year or next year even on that record digitization?
Over time, the volume should reduce. It depends on what's happening, but it should reduce.
Did any of that project create overtime in the past, or at least in the, I want to say, FY22?
I can check. I don't believe it did, but I wasn't here for most of that time, but I can certainly check and give you that information.
All right, thank you. And then on records coordinator, records director, having that records coordinator, does that speed up public records requests for, has that assisted in more timely response to public records requests?
So it has. Currently, we're working with the auditor's office, and perhaps the auditor might speak to it, but there are certain standards that we needed to meet based on audit results and data. So that's helping us to get there. So the additional support is needed at the moment to get us up to standard.
Okay, and then actually, I think that's all I have. Well, that's not all I have. I share with Commissioner Eastman the concern that at some point we're, and I know this is a smaller department, but if we were doing this on a 10% decrement, even in small departments, there's got to be, though again, a 1.72% increase compared to basic inflation is this is much lower than inflation is currently as of today. And certainly over the past year, a year from now, that might, but I don't know that we're going to even get close to that in basic inflation, CPI in the next year. So that is still under, what the total, what it costs to do business in this world, costs to live. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to clarify that operationally, we reduced by about 15.95%, but I guess the overall, it doesn't really, I guess it's not reflected there, but we did cut as much as we could right now, and we'll look for other opportunities to do so. We're a really small department, and we already operate lean, so that's to be considered as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the 10-year survey, Commissioner Eastman. So to go from 651 to up to $1 million, eScript was added, I think that was a significant cost. It was added before I got here. And I think, was that moved to the commission as an expense, or is it did it stay within?
Mr. Mayor, no, that cost stays with the city clerk, and it actually reduces each year. I can get the number for you. Typically, the startup cost is higher, but as we go into each year, it reduces.
Okay. All right, thank you. And the travel budget, you said initially it was 10,000, now it's down to 5, I believe.
5.
All right, who is traveling? Are the executive assistants, or is it just the clerk?
I believe both occurred in the past, based on information that I've seen. So the clerk and executive assistant. So typically, this involves like some sort of training or certification relative to the office and what we do.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Book.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Madam Clerk. On the programs, just a little bit of knowledge for me, I think, potentially for my colleagues, is the elections cost. When there are no elections, do we still have a contract that generates that as an annual cost? For example, this particular calendar year?
So the elections cost is, it's, I wouldn't say complicated, but we typically are billed in the subsequent fiscal year. So we recently, just this week, began paying for last year's elections. And the billing is also separate, so we'll have a separate bill for a regular election as opposed to a special election. So the cost here, the $245,000, that really doesn't cover the full election cost sometimes, which goes up to about 300 and something thousand. So we typically roll that cost over into the subsequent fiscal year to cover everything. For this year, we may have about $100,000 remaining from that amount that you see there, and that will roll into the general fund. But even though we don't have an election this year, or this current calendar year, we're still paying for last year's elections.
So we're paying in arrears essentially for
And
the
we're
preceding year.
Yes.
So we're probably going to need a more finite figure on that, right? We're going to have to get closer to what the actual figure is to know, because it's going to be that difficult as we get to the millions plus the increases that we've just seen across, 3 of our offices. And just what I repeated before is there is going to have to be percentage decrease at the senior management level. This is my opinion only, as painful as it is, just like when we reduce our salaries, because we essentially cannot support senior management getting paid at full levels where we're eliminating vacancies at people that, and this has been said by you, Commissioner Woods, also, people at the front line are the folks that are doing the vast majority of the work in an organization. And we do not benefit in efficiency and effectiveness of program and service where we are not able to provide the frontline service by the people who are typically lower paid. So where does that money come from? It's got to come from us, is where it's got to come from. This really doesn't affect you as a charter as much, because obviously we've got this interim selection piece that I think we'll be discussing at a future city commission thing, but it does affect the bigger picture of each time we go through a charter officer and the figures are higher, and then we get to the biggest piece of our organization, which is at the city level, and we attempt to chop many, many millions. There's not going to be the ability to do that without everybody receiving, especially at the higher levels of our costs and senior management, without there being reductions at those costs. That's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. So I would add to some of the conversation about elections. It depends on the complexity of the election. If we elect everybody in August, if they'll be assuming that everything moves forward as we currently understand it next year, then we have 3 positions up for election in 2024. If those are all decided in August, it's cheaper than if there's a runoff. If there's a special election, that gets more expensive. But we don't have any control over those things. So we have to budget higher than we would hope to spend. And honestly, it depends to some degree on how many people run. There is an additional cost for every candidate. More time spent, more complexity. The more complex the election becomes. So just another thing to think about. I don't know that we can be exact, unfortunately, on that. That's entirely one of those things that's out of our control. So, anything else, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marvell.
You were going to do the city commission too, aren't you?
He can do it.
Okay, all right. You bring the city commission up. We propose cuts in this area, but
I'm okay with that.
that's right. Actually, one commissioner proposed cuts in this area. So, all right. The city commission's budget is largely people, and you'll see that as a theme throughout these presentations. Every one of these charter officers' budgets are 90% individuals. This is a service organization. Services are provided largely by people. All right, so this is no different. You all are people, and that is your budget. So can I have the next slide? The personnel service salary and benefits are largely driven by that catching up, quite frankly, with that 8.9% CPI that hit in August of last year. That was after the budget process. So we're seeing some of the catch up here. CPI is projected for 23 to be actually about 3.9%. I'll believe it when I see it. And we go by August, so I don't think it's going to cool down that much by then. I want to explain the programs. Each commissioner has a separate program for their travel so that it's segregated by commissioner. So that's what programs are. In the clerk's budget, the program is the amount set aside for elections. And we designate within fund balance that flexibility if elections are more expensive, instead of rolling it into the budget and seeing how those things just grow over time by adding an inflator to them. It is better to address those with one-time resources as you need it. I believe that the administrative and general increase is the clerks moving stuff into the commission to track where those are. But yours is the commission's is pretty simple. It is driven largely by the CPI and, quite frankly, something out of our control where FRS sets pension contribution rates. All right, and the UAL rate for elected officials is high. So we expect it to go up in July. All right, any questions about your budget?
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to clarify for administrative and general, we actually reduced that line by $3,000 for local travel expense. So the FY24 proposed should actually be just the $11,246 amount.
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, the FTE on this is determined by city charter.
That is correct.
You have to change it.
Sorry, I forgot to
And
mention
just to be
that.
clear,
Mr.
in order,
Commissioner.
and in order to change it, would be-
We'd have to have a special election, which we haven't budgeted for.
which would cost more money. This is what I wanted to clarify. Also, the percentage change in salary is also set in city
Yeah,
charter or code?
no, by ordinance.
By ordinance.
Yeah,
So
yes.
theoretically-
So we're just following the ordinances we have.
As ordinances?
Time in memoriam, I think since the early 2000s is when it was originally
So,
set.
just for clarity, the increase, though there have been votes on it, but the increase that we see, the increase itself was not voted on by this or a previous commission. The 8.9%.
No. The original ordinance set the CPI in August as.
I just
as-
want to, I
as-
want to
yes,
clarify
yes,
those things.
Yes, and what's that, 2004, Dan, something like that?
The original
The
ordinance
original
is
city commission ordinance?
2002?
It was early 2000s. It's been there a long time.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. And then, have we traditionally spent the full program budget every year, and what does that look like in the past? Or is it like pandemic, less so?
So in the commission's budget, that's hard to clarify because it was easily to move commission expenses into the clerk's operating budget. So the clerk looked at how those funds were being spent and allocate them to the cost center that most represented how those funds, where those funds really benefited.
Okay, that kind of data would help me to understand, and though this is a small, if it's that, we're like, all right, let's work on 10% decrement, good, reduce by 10%. But if it's, I personally know that airfare has gotten really expensive and you literally can't do as much travel as you used to be able to do. So at some point, travel to go to for training or conference or to meet other elected officials who are dealing with similar issues. But if I understand what we've spent in the past, it's a lot easier to look at that. Clearly, I understand salaries, benefits, that data is all there. But it would help to see that from the past, even though I know this is a small cut, but if the urge is that there are cuts everywhere, it'd be helpful to see that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Eastman.
Yeah, I had hoped to find cuts in here that would get us down to a certain decrement, but obviously the CPI is set in there. I did say I'd do this for all of them, so we spent $368,000 on the city commission in 2013, and that's gone up to $490,000, which is 30%, which exactly matches CPI. So it's entirely this has just been CPI increases. It's about 30% inflation rate since 2013. To put that into perspective, it may be worth looking at, as you mentioned, budget to actuals on some of these program charges. So it's been interesting looking at budgets to actuals going through these because sometimes they are very close. Sometimes, like I said, with the attorney's office, they've always kind of over budgeted and then underspent, and different people have done it slightly differently. I'd like to see us make some cuts here if possible, just to kind of be all in this together. But I don't really know. There's not a whole lot here, I would just want to make that point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Eastman, Commissioner Chestnut.
So, just to be clear, the salary increase for commissioners is driven by the CPI, and that's what's in the ordinance?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the most volatile part of the total compensation there is the Florida retirement system contribution rate. It has skyrocketed in that 10 years for the elected official class.
And so you're only contributing for 6 commissioners, is that correct? No, maybe 5.
6. It is 6. And you're going to find, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Chestnut's going to find this interesting. As a retiree of the Florida retirement system, we still have to make an unamortized accrued liability payment associated with your pay. So, yeah, Florida retirement system's a great deal for us. Commissioner Book is not eligible because he participates, so we do not make a FRS contribution on Commissioner Book, but everyone else we do. Yeah. I was disappointed too, Commissioner Chestnut. So.
Yeah, because you shouldn't have to make one.
Yeah. You're welcome. Commissioner Book.
That actually was almost precisely a question I was going to talk about was FRS benefits on the city side for the city commissioners. Essentially, we're providing some benefit retirement package for city commissioners. Is that accurate or not accurate?
Well, that is accurate, yes.
And the cost of that in this salary and benefits, do we have any idea what that might be?
So the elected officials class, whether you are in the investment plan or the defined benefit side, is in excess of 50% of covered payroll, with the exception of one who is we only pay the liability payment, and that is by far the largest part of the contribution rate. I don't want anybody out there thinking that a commissioner's getting 50% contribution to their investment plan. They are not. They are the investment plan contribution rate is substantially lower than that. The rest is actually going to subsidize liabilities generated by other local governments, elected officials class who are in the defined benefit model. We have never had an elected official in the defined benefit model in the 20 years this has been around.
So to the extent, Mr. Mayor, that we're able to probably put a figure to what that benefit would, that might be helpful at one of our future budget meetings. And I realize, again, it's not going to have a lot of specificity, but it'll be an approximate number that deals with budgetary impact, so that would be good. Just one clarification, I think, Madam Clerk, did you say, so the fiscal year 24 proposed should actually be 11,246 under administrative and general?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
All right, so it's really, this is a tiny figure, but it's $3,000 less and the bottom. So our general fund total is essentially 554 as opposed to 557. And then the last question would be, so the 35,000 is 5 times 7 related to travel and conference and professional development?
That's correct.
Yes, oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it's 5,000 each, and that's been the number that's been set for quite some years. It's not gone up.
Yeah, I recognize it. Short-term sacrifice in professional development is, does not help us in the long run, right? You've got to be on the cutting edge. You have to understand what the trends are. We do need to provide the ability to go to a conference or network, because we probably can bring back efficiencies that in the short run affect us better. So I understand that. Maybe for one of our future budget things, it may be that we commit to a figure that is less than 35,000, but is collective for us as a board, knowing that then everybody might have a conference or a network or a league of cities that's absolutely critical that we attend as a representative, and then determine who that is, as opposed to 5 by 7. And then if we use it, we use it, but it does get us incrementally lower. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just, I want to talk about FRS real quick, because how long does a city official, an elected official have to work to be vested in it?
Well, it depends on the plan you join. The investment plan is 1 year. The defined benefit is an 8-year vesting schedule now.
All right, and so if an elected official does not, or not an elected office for 8 years.
Traditionally, even when they served consecutive terms, it was 6 years. This is the first rotation of the every other year, which was one of the reasons that was done, was to reduce the cost of elections. So
my question is about, because just when we start talking about what is the benefit about this, is that if someone doesn't, if they only serve currently 1 term, 4 years, then because they're not vested, their option is just to take out their contribution, only their 3% contribution?
in the defined benefit program?
In the defined benefit.
Correct.
All right, and so,
Now, quite frankly, FRS allows you to keep it there for a period of time should you go back and
Should you go back.
to an FRS participant.
because when we start talking about benefit, it's dramatically different for different people depending on what they choose to do. And then also determining what, that is the benefit now, but it's a big difference between me looking to retire at age 65 in the FRS system because I already had years, versus someone right now, or someone who's not in the defined benefit, who's in the investment plan. So just wanted to kind of poke those questions, because when we start talking about what is the real benefit, it's dramatically different for different people. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'm a big believer in the defined benefit model.
Me too.
Okay, I see no further lights on this one, so Mr. Marvell.
All right. The next one is my favorite charter officer, I'll have to be honest. So Ms. Curry is going to go through the city manager's budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Manager.
So to present the city manager's budget at this time, the city manager, of course, acts as the administrative head of the city of Gainesville's general government, is responsible for the administration of all departments except for those under the direction of other charter officers. The city manager is responsible for enforcing all city laws, ordinances, and policies, and acts as purchasing agent for the city and prepares the city's budget, performs other duties as assigned by the city commission. The core part of the city manager's budget is in the proposed budget, 3.85 positions, $981,000. The governmental affairs, community relations was new. We share this function with GRU. That portion of the budget, 424, is $613,232 with 4 positions. There was 1 position budgeted in neighborhood advocacy services. And then, as you see for the Gainesville community reinvestment area, a portion of one of the special advisor's salary is being charged to that particular fund. And the American Rescue Plan, a portion of a special advisor is being charged to that operating budget at $108,000. and a portion of a special advisor's salary will be charged to the half-cent infrastructure surtax. This is beginning fiscal fiscal 24, October 1. It is a total of 10 positions. Notes associated with the city manager's portion of the budget at 981. As I just mentioned, we updated cost allocations so that the cost associated with special advisors who are working on special things like ARPA is appropriately assigned to ARPA, and for the GCRA, appropriately funded by the GCRA, as well as the half-cent infrastructure surtax appropriately apportioned out to that operating fund in order to relieve the burden on the general fund. Also, in the city manager's office, I eliminated one vacant position, which was an executive assistant, senior. I also transferred one position to sustainable development. It's the chief climate officer. And I have voluntarily taken a salary reduction of 5% from my salary effective October 1. On the governmental affairs side, director position is reimbursed annually by GRU. That is the position for the Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations. It's budgeted 100% on my side, but I am reimbursed from GRU for 50% of that salary. On the neighborhood advocacy side, I eliminated 4 vacant positions, 2 program coordinators, 1 civic collaboration supervisor, 1 staff specialist, and there is funding for a temporary services person that was added to the neighborhood advocacy office. It was associated with my budget on the city manager's side. I moved that to the neighborhood advocacy services side in order to address the gap in services there. Next slide, please. For general fund only associated with the city manager's office, salaries and benefits for fiscal 23 as it was adopted was $1,873,367. Proposed for fiscal year 24, there's a reduction of $473,710. It's a 25% reduction. The 24 proposed budget is $1,399,657. On the operations and maintenance side, it has increased from $15,000 to $65,000. That is the $50,000 amount of money associated with the temporary services position. On the administrative and general government side, there's no change, $195,769, same in fiscal 24. And the grant and aid is basically a fund which I have not historically used, but it is for contingency purposes. It is $4,000. It's budgeted the same. Overall, the city manager's general fund budgets for fiscal 23 was $2,088,569 with 16 positions. In fiscal year 24, the budget is reduced by $423,710 to $1,664,859, moving it from 18 positions to 8.85 positions for a 20.29% increase.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Commissioner Saka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Madam Manager, for your work on this. I think this is the one that we saw like the most in depth prior to this meeting. I did have one question. As far as true eliminations, that is 4 positions.
It's 5.
5.
It's 1 position in my core office, which was an executive assistant, and 4 positions on the neighborhood advocacy side.
So a true 5, and the others are just more appropriately reflecting where their
Cost
work is done.
allocations, yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Willits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The neighborhood advocacy services, and I guess I'm sorry. The governmental affairs, the director position that is reimbursed 50% from GRU.
That is Yvette Carter.
Because administering the city's legislative agenda, I have a question about the portions of our agenda that are driven by concerns for GRU. Currently, we set priority. We set the legislative agenda of GRU.
The commission. Yes.
But into the future, someone else will be setting the agenda, and I have a concern about spending from. I do have a concern particularly for legislative agenda spending, supporting that That if someone else is setting the agenda, why should city dollars go pay for that?
This is 50%. 50%.
Right, that's the percent that come from, so the question is about what portion of GRU's legislative priority, our priorities for GRU are being supported in state capitals or federal, by general revenue funds. And what I'm getting at is GRU's, if the city commission does not set GRU's kind of legislative priorities, then
Understood.
GRU needs to pay for for the lobbying or whatnot of their agenda.
Sure. Mr. Cunningham and I, about a week ago, had a conversation with our staff, our core executive staffs, and we've identified about, maybe 20 items that are really SLA driven or could be SLA driven that we will need to work through over the next several weeks to a month to figure out what side of the ledger things will fall on. This is one of those items. And so there could be some modification, some change when this comes back to the commission. And we've been talking about that. So you're right.
So and I know it's kind of intricate because previously, as has been mentioned, it's just all the city and we set priorities. Obviously guided by UAB and by the general manager, but it's a huge portion of our government.
Understood.
That the direct authority is potentially being removed from us. Has the bill been signed yet? It hasn't been signed yet. So disintricating that or whatever is of interest to me because I just don't think that I don't think from general funds we should have to pay in essence a lobbyist for GRU. That's the simplest I can say it.
So if I might add, the lobbyist contract for the city is not in this budget. It is in non-departmental, and it is approximately
167.
160. I was about to say about
And that's the
160,000.
state and federal.
But that is the state and federal lobbying contract, which is not represented here at all.
Okay, thank you for and that's why I gathered it. It didn't just literally say the lobbyist contract, but it talks about governmental affairs.
Sure.
Some of that is lobbying, though it is not the lobbying contract. So thank you for clarifying that.
So, if I may, Mr. City Manager, there are two methodologies through which GRU shares in the funding of shared services. When you see a direct reimbursement on a position, it is because that position is either shared by GRU and general government, or it's a general government position that is specifically providing services for GRU. In the city attorney's office, is it still called the utilities attorney, Mr. Nee, or is it a senior assistant city attorney?
We have a position that is utilities attorney that's
Right.
currently being filled by an assistant city attorney too.
But it's earmarked for that. So that's when you see a reimbursement. It is for a position that is directly working for GRU, either shared or in whole. The indirect cost would pick up something like a lobbyist.
Right, and so it's
Well,
not-
actually, yes, the lobbyist.
I'm not
Okay.
objecting to the work that Ms. Carter does. That is really on behalf of GRU, and we're sharing a cost because she knows everything, and so she knows everything and everyone. And this is our best use of both probably GRU resources and ours. But that's what drives my question is because when we do talk about government affairs, it is not merely the lobbyist line that pays for some of GRU's priorities and agenda when it comes to legislative things. So that's why I want to make sure we pick that apart a little bit, and if there's an opportunity to draw a better line between general fund funding, priorities that are set by people who are not elected by the owners of the utility. That's what I'm getting at.
Do you have anything else?
I'm sorry. I'm good.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I provide just a little bit of clarity? So I just want to make sure it's clear. I think the city manager summarized it well. So for government affairs, we kind of entered a little new waters when we did this last year. And so what we did was we took Yvette's position and we split that, and GRU pays half and general government funds pay half. And then staff, some of the staff stayed in GRU, and GRU pays 100% of that staff, and some of the staff is on the general government side, and general government pays for that staff. The lobbyist, GRU pays half of the lobbyist cost, and general government pays half the lobbyist cost. So I just want to make that clear. There's not one side paying for the other. We really try to define that out and keep that pure. The other thing I wanted to say is just reinforce what the city manager said, which is what we're trying to do going forward is figure out, bring that clarity, I think, Commissioner, that you're referencing of where's the line going forward and how do we continue in this effort. So for instance, with this position, we could have a service level agreement where we continue to pay half of the salary and we get that service or the lobbyist. And so we're trying to put together those agreements so that that's clear who's responsible for what. And we are working through that, and we will bring back some of that to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. Mr. Book.
Thank you, sir. So the Madam Manager, thank you for reducing your salary in the proposed budget.
I didn't want to, but it was the right thing to do.
I would agree with that. But thank you for that. I'm understanding, so 16 positions essentially down to 9. One of those is actually a transfer under a department division, the climate officer. So we'll see that, elsewhere under that particular line in the department, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then remind me the operations and maintenance. You started to mention that again. What is that cost increase?
The cost increase there is, we have a temporary service employee that is at the front desk. As you come into the building, he is not an employee of the city. He works under a temporary service agreement.
Understood. So it's contractual.
That is correct.
Costs under the operations and maintenance. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Mr. Eastman.
Thank you. I also wanted to thank you, Madam Manager, for looking into these decrements and really making some real cost cuts. I want to point out there's been it's $843,000. We're now up to, I guess it's $2 million, which will then be cut down to 1.6, which is a 147% increase. And so I think the decrements really make a lot of sense here, and I appreciate you really thinking through what is a core service of the city. I think, obviously our outreach and our community engagement and the neighborhood advocacy that was done before is important. But I mean, if we're looking at a new future here at the city where core services are we take a much harder look at what are core services and what are not. I think that makes sense what you brought forward. I do want to kind of leap off of what Commissioner Willits was saying with GRU. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time trying to think through how exactly we move forward if this thing does pass. I do want to make the point which I made before, which is that we, as the legislative body of GRU, have the power of a home rule municipality where we can do everything allowed under general law. This board does not have that ability. And so unless it is explicitly outlined in HB 1645 that this new board can do things like lobbying, like government relations, they do not have that right to do that. The GRU board. And they wouldn't as a separate entity, is my understanding. But I guess what I'm saying, Commissioner Willis, that's just my interpretation of it, reading through various Attorney General opinions. Like, it's going to be a very sticky situation trying to understand what this board can do, what it cannot do, what we can work with them on, what we cannot work with them on. But I do want to have that these budgets could be altered quite drastically if it does pass, and then we start looking at what is allowable expense, what is not allowable expense, and what we want to keep on and what we don't, because that will be coming in, I believe, in our charter July 1st if signed, correct? I mean, we will have to live by that as what is allowed and what is not allowed. So I just wanted to leap into there and thank you, Madam Manager, for really getting the assignment and really making some real cuts here.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I too want to thank the manager for taking a personal decrement here. We appreciate that. Commissioner Eastman has said really what I wanted to say is that we don't know what we're operating with, and we don't know what the cost will be. That board may end up coming to us to contract for services. So I think we just need to bear that in mind as we're going through the budget, because we're dealing with an unknown. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Willits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to respond to both Commissioner Chestnut and Eastman, to some degree, this is about my fears, and because we don't know, there's some uncertainty. And, that board, because the way it is written, theoretically, they have some limited. I'm just a little afraid that they may not think it's limited and that we won't have as immediate of a response from either the Attorney General with advisory opinions or courts to come in and say, no, it is far more limited than you imagine, and your city commission is really setting, some of that kind of, legislative even agenda or priorities. But like you said, Commissioner Chestnut, there's a whole lot of unknown here. And so this is just one of those, I think this is one little thread that we're starting to unravel, and we're going to see it come up several times. So thank you for that reminder. And thank you for Commissioner Eastman for reminding us that I may be operating more in fears than what is written in the bill. The bill is a little, I think, deficient. And that's probably why we can entertain fears, because the bill as written has always been deficient. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And just to that, Mr. Mayor. So therefore, we must always look for teachable moments. Teachable moments.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. That is absolutely accurate. Everybody's accurate with this. We don't know what we don't know. We discussed briefly on Monday the idea when we were talking about the GRU budget, the fact that we know what's in front of us. We know what we do have control over, and we must focus, I believe, on those things that we do know that we have control over, and be prepared to shift in a variety of directions and take advantage of opportunities as they are presented to us. But mostly for the next several months, probably for the next year or so, get comfortable with ambiguity. There's going to be a lot of that, a lot of that. So, thank you, Madam Manager, for the care that you took with this budget and for the personal sacrifice. And let's move ahead to GPD, I believe now. Oh, I'm sorry.
Brutal.
Sorry about that. You're hiding back there.
If you'd pull up the Office of Equity and Inclusion, please. Mr. Folsom, the mic's all yours. Right. 3 minutes now.
Welcome, Mr. Folsom.
I wish. I wish. Zora Folsom, Director for the Office of Equity and Inclusion. You can go to the first slide. As you can see, our proposed budget for FY24 is $1.5 million, 12 FTEs. For notes, Immigrant Affairs Manager funding was transferred to the ARPA funding, so we'll be filling that position. Program budget is rollover request for remaining funds in the program budget. As you look down in salaries and benefits, salaries ended up increasing by $37,000. I think Steve has already spoken why everybody's salary dollars have gone up. Under operation and maintenance, the reason why for FY23-24 the change is $78,000. That change is temporary staff to support small business and office administration. We have 2 temps that are assisting with our small business area. As you know, we only had 1 person doing small business. And before it's asked in FY 2013, the small business person was 0.5%. And in that particular year, a former director asked that it be increased by 0.5. Originally, when the office first got small business, it was only at 0.5%. As well as in 2013, I believe we only had 4 people. Let me count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 positions and 5 were filled. Of those 5 that was filled, one of them was 0.5, was a 0.5 FTE. And again, that was the small business person. In administrative in general, we made operational cuts of $108,000. Also in grants and aids is $4,000. And in programs, we reduced the programs budget by $39,000. So our total cut here was $32,677. Our increment cut that we ended up submitting when we was asked for 10% budgets cuts was $153,811. Any questions?
Mr. Eastman?
All right, so I'll start off the way I started this off, though this will come as less surprise just because the Office of Equity and Inclusion has gone through so many changes over the years. But yeah, in 2013 it was 583,000 up to 1,598,000 now, so 174% increase, and that included small business. You said was in there in 2013, correct?
Yes, at 0.5.
And then there's the equity reviews, and then what has been added since that time period?
So in 2005, there was an equal opportunity specialist position that was vacant. In 2013, that is, there was an executive assistant. Again, the small business minority business program coordinator was at 0.5. That particular FY13 year, it was asked that be increased to a full-time FTE. Also in 2013, there was an HR technician of one. There was an equal opportunity specialist senior that was one, and it was an equal opportunity specialist, which is 1.5. So at that time, if you include the 0.5 that was added to small business, it was a total of 6 employees. Now we have a total of 13 positions within our office. If you go back and look, what's very interesting about this position is technically the job description for this position hasn't changed since it started. Hasn't. So if somebody say, oh, you're doing the same thing, you don't have much to do, that's only part of the story. If you go back and review just the request from the last 2 years and what this office has been asked to do, there's a lot of increased responsibilities. I'm glad you noted that are not in the job description. And if I go all the way back to 2013, when Cecil Howard was here, there's been a tremendous amount of them. But I think the requests have been warranted. I think they've been needed as we try to do a better job of meeting the needs of our small business community. I think they've been warranted and needed as we try to make and are continuing to try to make that push for bringing equitable services to the citizens of the city of Gainesville. I think they've also been needed as we've tried to bring equitable hiring practices to the city of Gainesville if I look back from 2013 to now. So a lot of those initiatives were put into place, some by this commission, some by previous commissions, some by previous commissions as well, as services that would like to see us offer the citizens of Gainesville as we move forward.
Do you have any empty FTEs at the moment?
I do. I actually have 5 empty FTEs right now. One of them is empty because one of the rules that we have here at the city of Gainesville is when somebody's filling an interim role, I have an interim compliance manager. So when somebody fills an interim role, you have to have a position for them to fall back to. So it's one person I don't want to say who's going to get it, but there's one person and you always have to have an empty position behind them. So yes.
So that's 5. I guess I was looking in the backup for so the compliance investigators essentially. That was
Yes.
one person that is now doing that is applying for a role.
Yes.
I see there's 2 compliance investigators currently.
Yes.
Can you what do the compliance I see that wasn't something that was there in 2013 or that wasn't a name, that wasn't a title. What does the compliance investigator work on? What is that?
Compliance investigators works on both external and internal cases. They also work on training around discrimination, sexual harassment, retaliation. For example, we are conducting trainings right now in RTS. We normally do trainings in RTS during the summer months. Most of you know why, because the bus services kind of slow down, and we're doing that. I think it's every week or every 2 weeks we're doing that currently right now. We just had one yesterday. Another thing that is an addition is fair chance hiring. For example, something that you don't see reflected in this budget, it cost us over $5,000 to send 2 people to training for fair chance hiring ordinance. Some of you may know to administer that ordinance, you need to be a code enforcement officer with the state. So we had to send them to 40 hours of training a piece, and they had to take a test to be able to administer that program. So they do that internally and externally and training, because one of the things I talked about during my interim capacity when I applied was the need for us to do more internal reach and external reach. And so we've done that in terms of offering more training opportunities internally and externally to the citizens of Gainesville. Employment law seminar, fair housing seminars, and things of that nature. Something else that's a vacant position, since you asked me, one of them is a DEI specialist position. We are now in the process of going through the process of getting that reclassified to a DEI manager position. That position has been vacant now for months, and it's been a challenge hiring somebody for it, finding somebody for it, because a lot of people that are in that space have experience, if you will, in it, and have been doing it for a very, very long time, and they wouldn't want to come down to take a decrease to be a specialist versus that of being a manager. So we are elevating that to a manager. The reason why that position is so important for us, that position helps us in terms of our AA plan. All right, so our affirmative action plan in terms of making sure that we have diversity within positions, within classifications, as well as making sure that people have jobs to transfer into or promote into. That position also is there to monitor any creation of new jobs to make sure we've looked at our diversity goals, as well as make sure we looked at our diversity within those departments or areas that are going to be filling positions at the city of Gainesville. So that position is a critical position that we're in the process of hiring right now. And the compliance investigator, there's actually two. So one I told you is a backfill. The other one is a position right now that we have and to get ready to go to the interview phases. The reason why we have that going to the interview phases is because we needed backfilling. We want to make sure that we have enough staff on hand to also provide the internal, external trainings at the level that I believe that you guys want us to do it at, but at the same time, make sure that we can move cases out and resolve cases in a quickly time frame. So we have that position on the street. I've seen some candidates we're going to be interviewing here soon to make sure we fill in that particular area. The other position is a DEI manager position that's vacant right now. That's a position that
And that's different than the diversity inclusion specialist that you're going to be putting.
Correct. It is different. And then that position, just to keep in mind, we're probably not going to utilize it this time, but something that most people may not know, as a smaller charter, I'm only allowed to create one position a year. So what happens is if I give you up my position, the only way I'm going to get it back is I create one in a year, or I'm going to have to come back to the city commission to get it because I'm a smaller charter.
Is that an ordinance?
I think that's in policy or procedure.
Okay.
So if you can help me out with that, that'd be great. But anyway.
Well, I mean, I don't want there to be a sort of a situation where we're trying to find decrements here, and you're saying, well, you know, we have, because you have the most FTEs here, and you're also the charter with the most increase within the budget over a 10-year time frame. For you to say, well, I would like to, I guess what's the term where you feel like you're going to lose it permanently if you give it up now, or if we say, okay, well, if we're in a better budget situation in the future, we don't want you to say, well, I have to wait a year, then I have to wait another year. Like, if we think that it's an important thing to have in our city, I guess what you're saying is you would come back to us and have that conversation at that point. But it looks like, I mean, just from the outside, that as far as getting decrements in there, that your office has the most opportunity to do so because there's more empty FTEs and because there's been a larger increase in the budget over time, and it's more programmatic than usual.
Right. So one of the things that we did do that you would notice if you saw our breakdown of FTEs, I gave up the equivalent of one FTEs in just cash. So we gave up $89,000 in personal services dollars, which is the equivalent of a position versus giving you a position. So I literally have a position that I took all the money from it to give towards making a cut. Right. So again, it goes back to, I still had the position, but if I'm going to actually fill it in the future, I'm probably going to have to still come back to you. You could be like, hey, listen, I need a few dollars, or I'm going to have to reappropriate the dollars that I have currently within my budget to see if I can make that happen.
I don't have any other questions. I might come back around later, but
okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. Commissioner Book.
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director. So the Immigrant Affairs Manager funding, we basically transferred that to grant and non-recurring monies, hence our decrease in fiscal year 24 proposed.
We didn't transfer the money. What I did is I cut the money. So I cut $89,000 from our personal services line. That money will be gone come October the 1st. What we did is we moved the position to ARPA. So it's going to come out of our ARPA dollars.
I understand. That would be non-recurring. That's grant funding.
Yes,
so
sir.
If that's some future thing, probably called a different name in the future, then it's potentially we could apply for that under a grant. But that position goes away as the ARPA funding goes away in your current proposal.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay. Thank you for that. And then similar to what Commissioner Eastman was saying with the positions, we're basically holding 5 positions, but it's 3 people. Is that right? Because we're locking in 2 positions based on an interim or an acting type of staff member?
Yes and no. One of the positions is a backfill, compliance investigator is a backfill. The D&I specialist position is on the street, so that's now 2. The third one is a compliance investigator position that's actually being interviewed here in a couple weeks. And it's only one really that's not filled or not planned to be filled, and that's a D&I manager position.
All right, so my thought and comment was, much like we're freezing positions everywhere, I'm very, very reluctant to eliminate them because we just don't know in the long term with the ambiguity that we've been talking about. I would be in favor of freezing the positions that we have because the cost savings will be even greater than what's here for fiscal year 24 proposed. And then my last is more a comment. Probably, Mr. City Attorney, this would be more towards your areas. There's a tremendous amount of legislation that either is awaiting signature or coming on signature, and some of it's affecting many government organizations. And insofar as there may be legislation in there that's either coming July 1, October 1, or awaiting a potential governor's signature, we want to look to see if there's any that impact this particular office, because there's certainly some legislation that's impacting some other government type office, and we just want to make sure, to the extent we can, is there any there that might be impactful to it. And that would be it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Commissioner Eastman?
I'll pass it on to Commissioner Chestnut.
I think, to Commissioner Book's point, I think the legislation right now addresses public institutions, not governmental at this point. Perhaps next year.
Thank you. That would be my hope also. Mr. Mayor, just jump in there. I just want to make sure we don't miss something that's legislated and required upon us. And all of a sudden it impacts even greater our budget in ways that we didn't anticipate to the extent we're able to. That's it.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Chestnut. Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Now, we are currently under a hiring freeze, correct? Or am I misunderstanding? Can I get some, what is strategic hiring freeze versus a charter? Can I get clarification on
Sure,
that?
a strategic hiring freeze is specific to the needs of the department. It's just not a hard freeze.
Okay.
You can make decisions depending on what your operations really call for. He's a separate charter, so he makes that decision on behalf of what his operations dictate.
Okay. In the same way that you would if there's a very specific need. I mean, I want to give as much flexibility to our charters to figure out what those needs are. I just would ask that if we are going to be hiring, that those are true needs, because that as we're putting things forward, that is something that is absolutely needed and not something that may come up in the budget. Because I will point out there's sort of a if we're talking about getting rid of FTEs here, there is sort of there will be a push to fill those FTEs if our goal here will be to say don't eliminate people, eliminate empty FTEs. I don't know. I'm almost inclined to just say that there should be almost entire hiring freeze across the board and just let that move forward, except in very specific circumstances. But I'll hear from my fellow commissioners about that. But if we're going to be serious about trying to cut $18 million from this budget, then we need to be serious about holding the line on that and making sure that we're not filling these positions in a way that will make it so we won't have to lay people off in the future. That's my only point. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Eastman. I'll get to you in a second. Commissioner Willits, regarding that, I would say we want to be careful about hard freezes because we have empty police officer positions. We have empty firefighter positions. We have empty bus driver positions, empty meter readers. There are positions that must be filled. And it is, I think it's important to leave that to the discretion of the charter rather than and then trust that the charters must exercise that discretion. That's my position on renovation.
And I guess I'm making my position that we should be watching carefully as to what those are in there, and that if we are the ones who are holding the charters accountable for what those positions are, that we need to be holding them accountable.
Come back and tell us.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Willits.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think perhaps you were getting, Commissioner Eastman, getting that. Director Paulson mentioned about his ability to hire one more to create new positions. We discussed this in the Finance Committee meeting. Different charters have different abilities. During the normal budget year, identify new, particularly, let's say new needs, and say, I'm gonna hire a coordinator for blank. And different charter officers have different levels of which they're able to do. And that is kind of normal business as usual. So that is a piece I want to look at in this next year, because if we don't fill vacancies, and could be some layoffs, and then if we just get into the same situation where all of our charters are still allowed to add one, or Madam City Manager, how many, I forget, is yours 3 per year you can have?
I'm sorry?
How many positions can you create per year without coming back to the commission? Is it 3?
It's 3 to 4, but
Right.
3 is generally.
Couldn't quite remember. And so you add that up across all charters, and it's a number, and a natural fear could be, oh, we're going to set a budget like this is what it's going to look like. And then October 1st, suddenly there's a whole bunch of quote unquote new needs that are just backfilling what has been lost. And so I want to look at that in this next year, that policy we have. Not that I do not trust in general our charter's ability to identify needs, but that in this particular situation, I think we're going to need to be a little more careful. And I mean, in essence, everyone's got to sing for their supper, even more so. And so that is something I would want to look at, and maybe that's a topic of conversation in the future commissioners. If that's part of what you were hearing and suddenly being concerned about, that's business as usual. That's a normal process outside of just looking at one budget and the number of FTE and what we've requested of charters. I kind of am.
Yes. I mean, I'm struggling with the idea of giving our charters flexibility to do their jobs. I mean, my philosophy of management is you hire good people, you let them do what they got to do. With the same time that as I'm looking at where budget increases have gone in, it's not necessarily under the specific departments. We'll get to the police budget, but the police has barely made up with inflation over time, right? Fire has, I think, just gotten with inflation until this year. The COLA has seen a huge increase there, but I don't know if we're going to give more flexibility to the charters, then we have to be pretty harsh during budget time to say, what exactly are you increasing? Why are you increasing? What are you doing there? And it seems like, as I look over budget increases in the past, prior commissions have not, in a time where, tides are rising, there's been any reason to sort of poke and prod at the various budget and the increments that have come in. And so I think that might be something to look at in the future. It's also that we could start creating more of a culture where we're starting to ask a lot more of those questions, because the answers will be harder. Every dollar, when you have shrinking budgets, every dollar that you are spending over here is less of a dollar that you can spend over there, as opposed to a time of growth where people are just trying to figure out how to increase, like, where's the best way to make new investments. That's a much easier time to have those conversations. So yeah, I mean, I think that might be one way to address it. But I don't know if that answers your question. That's sort of where I was looking.
I think it does. It helps. Yes, this is part of a conversation that we can't have otherwise. So that's why part of this is just conversational between us, between everybody here, because I have similar thoughts, and some of it may come up in the budgetary process, really asking our charters to look at everything very carefully. But then also into the next budget year, if it's that we need to change policy, that they're coming up back to us for even their one new position, if they need to come back to us, rather than we trust and they're off doing it. That's something I definitely will entertain. It's not, I don't want to micromanage, but in a budget, we're just in a slightly different situation and still some unknowns. So it's a little more appealing than it previously would have been. I conclude. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willits. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I think that the word that the charters were using in terms of the hiring freeze and who to hire was essential services, and coming back there. As we go through the budget, the general manager for utilities, I'm still toying with some language they used the other day. I think they have 115 vacancies. They want to eliminate or freeze 20 positions, but they're not eliminating the FTE. So I'm not sure where that really places the positions. Yeah, if you could answer that, please.
Sure, Mr. Mayor. So what we were proposing is unfunding those 20 positions for fiscal year '24 as we develop the long-range strategy over a 10-year period of what those reductions would be. So we were, because of the short window, completely eliminating the positions might not be the best thing to do for a 10-year period. So we were unfunding them for the fiscal year '24. Correct. And then we're going to have to develop what that reduction is going forward beyond that, which may be those same positions, and we may eliminate the FTEs, but it may not. We could, move to a different strategy as we develop a more long-term, sustainable plan.
You good? Okay, all right, thank you. Oh, sorry. All right, thank you. So before there are no more lights on now, so before we move on, thank you, Mr. Folston. I appreciate it. Before we move on to GPD, I want to make some general comments about the small charters, the small office charters, the charters who employ fewer people. How about that? The nature of most of the additions that I've seen in those offices has very often been because the commission, at one point or another, since 2008, since the last major reductions in force, it was a question of the commission came up with, not always, but very often, the commission came up with an idea that became a program, and we expected the charter responsible to go handle that. And the way to handle that is to bring on staff that knows how to do that. And it didn't always result, I can't speak to, 15 or 16 years, but for the last 6 years, it didn't always result in that charter coming back and saying, my understanding of what you're asking for is going to mean 2 positions at $135,000 a year. But that charter officer often just took the responsibility of saying, okay, you told me what to do, I'm going to go get it done for you. Either of those are good ways to do it. There have been commissions who preferred just go get it done, and commissions that, as we are about to be, who need to know exactly what the detail of that is. And we are going to have to readjust ourselves to understand that when we go set that out, instead of it immediately happening, the charter is going to have to come back to us at a future meeting and tell us, this is my understanding and this is what it's going to cost. So it's going to be a multi-phase implementation of programs as opposed to what we've done in the past, which has primarily been go get it done. That is a change in practice for the commission, and we should be prepared for that. I don't anticipate that we're going to be adding a lot of program in the next year or two, but that is going to be a difference in the way we approach it, because they're not going to be able to say, okay, got that covered with the staff that they have. Much of that, half of our charter offices and much of our, certainly, finance staff through the manager's office is about compliance and about checking up on things and making sure we're doing things correctly, whether it's through the attorney's office or through the auditor's office or equity and inclusion. And those are things that we really can't cut. Those are things that are sometimes visited upon us that we must comply with otherwise. We want to be very careful that we don't. I will tell you that some of the history that's been shared with me is that in 2008, we made some unwise cuts. Cuts had to be made. We cut things like finance. And it took years for that to bear less than great fruit. But that put us in a position that we are trying to manage right now. So I want us to be very careful as we move forward with understanding the years of potential years that it takes for a problem to fester until it becomes something that a future commission has to deal with. We don't always know the consequences, but we're going to have to be very careful that when we make a cut, understanding there probably are some consequences down the road and trying to figure out what those might be. It is also true that we have more charter officers than any government that I am aware of. There's no other city out there, no county that I'm aware of that has 6 charter offices. 2, maybe 3. 2 is common, some have 3. We have 6. So if you have 2, if you have a manager and an attorney maybe, the manager's office is then responsible for a variety of, for managing lots of departments that here are charter offices that we must manage and oversee as a group of 7 people in public, whereas a traditional management structure makes that a whole lot easier to directly manage. It is hard for us to manage 6 people with 7 people in public. That is not a best practices sort of man. I don't know what management school out there says this is a good way to do things, but it's what we have. So it does require us to take on a more severe level of management consistency than we have in the past, and that is going to be uncomfortable for us and for the folks that we're working with. So having said all that, Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Folston, I needed to bring you back up for a quick question. I apologize that I let you sit all the way down. Thank you, though. So oftentimes we hear you talk about your plans to operationalize equity, and I know that you have a lot of things that are in the works. I wanted to kind of circle back with regards to one of the positions that you're asking, but do you currently engage in the hiring process across charter offices or at anywhere in the city? Does the Office of Equity and Inclusion engage in the hiring process in any way?
Directly, no. Indirectly, positions are sent to us to make sure they have the right EEO codes, etc. But in terms of direct integration, no. It's one of the reasons why one of these positions will help assist in that area.
Which is what I was cutting to. So can you tell me which one of those? I heard you mention
It's the one that we're
the
going
DEI specialist and the DEI manager. Is it one of those?
It's D&I specialist now, but we're going to we're in the process right now reclassing it to DEI, D&I manager. And one of the roles that job would be doing is educating everybody on the affirmative action work plan, which positions have goals, as well as looking at the way we conduct our pools for applicant pools for different positions, and be able to provide insight and counsel in terms of making sure applicant pools are diverse, and making sure we're adhering to any laws and regulations.
Okay. And you are currently in the process of hiring that now? Is that what I heard?
Yes, it's on the street, but we've reclassing it to a manager. It was a specialist, and we couldn't get nobody. So I called around to several people within the profession and within the field, both in the private sector and public sector, and they all said the same thing. Nobody's going to come work for you for that number. And I was like, thank you for telling me to my face. And then their counsel was the number is off, and really the position is off. Most people in that vein are seasoned. And if they're coming to you, they're going to already be seasoned, knowing what they need to do. And so you need to make it a manager position. So we're in the process of doing that through the HR process right now. Okay. But we want to have that. The city used to have a D&I specialist position before. So it's not necessarily a new thing for the city. It is a new practice for us under my leadership to institute again, because it had waned. I'll say it that way.
What will the pay rate be?
Ma'am?
What will the range be? The salary range, do you know?
I don't know at the top of my head, but I can get it to you.
Okay, all
So
right.
there will be a new range because it'll be a manager position.
Okay, all right, thank you. I conclude.
Yep.
Thank you. Commissioner Eastman.
I'm so glad that you mentioned sort of the structural hurdles here as it relates to our charter offices. I will point out that we do have a mechanism upon which to change that by our charter, a 4/5 vote. We can bring anything that we would like to the voters of the city of Gainesville and see if they would like a change in our charter. And I think in a period of time where we're rethinking the structuring of the city and where we're rethinking efficiencies within our city, that might be a time to think about something on the 2024 ballot that would allow the voters to decide whether or not that the structure that is unlike any other city as well that I have seen, if that's a structure that we would like to continue doing. And I'd be curious other people's thoughts on that. But I think if there's a time to be rethinking about structures, I think it would be at a time like this where a lot of things are up in the air at the moment. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Eastman. So following briefly on that, when you say 2024 budget or 24 ballot, I assume you mean November 2024 because there are actually 3 ballots. And
as per our charter, it has to be a general election ballot.
Okay, fair enough. Well, they're all 3 general election ballots. I think.
I think the November ballot is the general election ballot. It wouldn't be a primary or a presidential primary.
Okay, that's fair. Regardless, that is what I would recommend. That's where we would be anyway to give the community, if such a thing were likely, and I'm not sure that it is at all. But if such a thing were going to happen, I would lean toward that one because that gives the most people in the community the opportunity to weigh in on anything. Understand too that adds cost to our election process. Everything we talk about up here, one way or another, adds expense, and it's important that we understand that. Now that's the sort of thing that, depending on the wisdom of the public, might end up in the long run reducing expenses, but in the short run, it would add to the election expense. Just adding items that need to be counted by the supervisor elections would change our expense ratio. So, at any rate, I don't see any more lights about all of this. So, Mr. Marvell, if you want to take us to the cleanup matter. Sure. Yeah. Let's do that. I think that's. Hold on. But did you have something to add to this before that? Very good. Okay. All right. We're gonna take. We'll be back at 5:20. All right. Let's get back at it. We had the 7th inning stretch. Bring us in.
Okay. Well, welcome back again, Steve Arvell, Acting Director, Office of Management and Budget, for those of you just tuning in. If I can get the GPD presentation up, please, that would be helpful. All right, go right on to the next slide. I just introduced that it was GPD. All right, I'm going to go through the cost center and numbers. Obviously, we have plenty of subject matter experts with policing in the room. Chief Scott, Captain Owens, Chief Inspector Kernick, and Dimitri Nuremberg, who's their lead analyst over there. Been a great addition from my perspective, getting to work with him. The Office of the Police Chief is the administrative arm of GPD. That is where the big guys are, and ladies. The District 1 and 2, that is the patrol arm of GPD. And one thing I will give GPD credit for is, boy, do they have performance metrics. They have a lot of them, and they give you quarterly updates, so the numbers should not be new to you. School resource officers are the ones, obviously, in the schools, and there is a contract with the school board for that. It does not recover the entire cost of the school resource officers, but there is a cost recovery mechanism with the school board. The school board's no different than any other local government. They have budgetary constraints just like us, so we try to work in partnership with them. Now, the airport is a 100% cost recovery, correct, Dimitri? Yes. So the airport authority does pay 100% of the cost of those officers. I believe the mental health co-responder is something that was added in the last few years as an enhancement to policing and that is still included in the budget. There's no change there. In fact, the only places you will see reductions, they're vacancies, and they're not sworn. And we talked, city manager and the CERT folks spoke extensively with chief and the command staff about how they would do it. And I will get to one and why we think it ultimately will be an enhancement for GPD. These units are self-explanatory. The domestic violence unit obviously works on the domestic violence front. Next slide. Party Patrol is an enhanced service that was probably added 10 years ago to combat some of the rowdiness in the College Park area on game day, Fridays and weekends. So the forensic crime labs where they process evidence. Where is the Detectives Bureau, Special Investigations? They'll have to tell you the difference between those two. And then they have a bunch of specialty units: SWAT, traffic homicide. Traffic is the traffic officers. They are part of the specialty unit, right? Yeah, traffic enforcement. So let's go to the next slide. Internal affairs, self-explanatory. As you can see, these are...
Mr. Varvel,
Yeah.
let me back you up one. We have a question on resource officers. Yeah. Mr. Chestnut. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that the state has gone round and round on school resource officers and what the school board is going to pay, or if they pay any. Is the school board paying any of this cost?
Yes, they fund. Well, yeah, it's not 100% cost recovery, but there's a public purpose
Oh,
for
yeah.
both of us to have them in the schools. So
All right. And I think that the other part comes from, the sheriff's office pays, also puts resource officers out in the county schools, correct? All right, so I just wanted to be sure that
Yeah.
we were getting what we were recovering there.
yes, and that is schools inside the city limits.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chestnut. Go ahead, Mr. Varvel.
The personnel, legal office at $1,200. We tried to make them cut that; they just wouldn't. Personnel division is the kind of tip of the spear. They're the ones that out there are recruiting and trying to make GBD an attractive employer, and there are sworn folks in there. And quite frankly, we've tried it with civilians in the past. It was not very successful. It is much more success having police officers recruit people to be police officers. So, support services, that's more police officers and civilians. Technology is their IT function. They rely a lot on technology for a number of things. I'm not sure where they fall in. We did eliminate a crime analyst position. They had 2 vacancies, but the thought was they had been persistently vacant, and a pay was a reason that with 2 paid more, that we'd have a better chance of actually doubling the staff based on historical things. So part of that money is going to be repurposed to get the pay right. All right, I think we're getting near the end. You all have a lot of cost centers. Property received, stores, and disposes of all property and evidence. Police records, that's where all the records associated with contacts with police, crash reports, the whole thing. The training unit, obviously there is a significant amount of training required to maintain certification in the state of Florida, and GPD tries to do as much of it in-house as they possibly can. They have 2 other funding sources that are not general fund. Billable overtime is booked into a special revenue fund, and the funds collected there are used to offset the cost of that. And we do recover 100% of the billable overtime cost. Okay, and then miscellaneous grants. These are This is just the salary portion of it, and they don't include any operating budget. But GPD's total total FTE account is 382 3/4. That is actually 3 positions less than they have in 2023. I think if you go back 2 slides, I think we summarized it somewhere. One more. I guess we didn't. All right. Okay. It's summarized on the end. So, all right. Yeah.
Let me pause you there.
I'm sorry. They had 379. So we cut 3. There was the crime. Just the general fund total, but we cut 3 positions, and they were all non-sworn. I remember the crime analyst. What were they? Oh, they are? Okay, thank you.
Let me pause you for a second, Mr. Marvell. You wait, okay, all right. Go ahead. Okay.
The 3 positions that Mr. Marvell was referring to that were reduced, there was an assistant police chief that was reduced. There was a program coordinator and a crime analyst. Those are the 3 positions that were reduced from 23 to 24.
Thank you. Okay.
How did I forget that assistant chief? Thanks. All right, that is the general fund total.
Excuse me, there's a question from the dais, Commissioner Chestnut.
Are we hiring, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Are we hiring an assistant police chief now?
Yes, ma'am. There were 2
okay.
positions, and we cut 1.
I see. So just be 1 assistant police chief. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think we're ready for any other. Next slide, please. This is a summary. As you can see, that there is a increase of over $5.4 million to GPD's budget. Those are largely contractual wage increases for the FOP PBA, and the majority of their workforce is covered under those 2 contracts. And it also had, we did the same thing with GPD that we did with GFR, where instead of doing an end-of-the-year budget adjustment for their overtime, we recognized their overtime cost up front in their budget. We do believe that that is a more transparent way to show the cost of service as opposed to a last end-of-year budget amendment that gets kind of lost in everything else that goes on at the end of the year. But this is largely driven by contractual wage increases. All right, next slide. Okay, juvenile justice, as you all know, there have been some, the city manager has put out numerous communications on juvenile justice. This is going to be rolled into GPD. It's the BOLD program. The 3.5 positions, 254,000, but we do feel that it was, the city manager felt that it was important that we showed the cost that is being eliminated. But I'll let her speak directly to where we are in the process of that. But that had a total of, it looks like 20 and a half positions reduced, of which many of them were filled. 2, 3. I'm trying to count how many
I
were
have it,
filled.
Steve.
All right, so 10, 13. We have it up there. It's a number that makes you sad, quite frankly. So.
This program is separate from GPD at this time. Based on the audit, State Auditor General's findings and the findings associated with the Reichert House in particular, as I put the internal team on trying to review where we were with the findings, we really just could not get past the issues or solutions that would have addressed those findings. We haven't been able to get past that. And so the decision that I made and shared with the commission was that program would, the Reichert House program in particular, would end at the end of the school's calendar year, which is May 31st. The program would roll into GPD over the summer, and those employees would be maintained through the fiscal year, which is September 30. What you're seeing here is at the first observation by GPD of what could be rolled into GPD effective October 1. Right now, the BOLD program, the 254,000, 3.5 positions at this point in time have been determined by GPD to be rolled into their program. That leaves approximately 16 positions that are filled, and I may have the numbers wrong, but it's approximately 16 positions, is that right? How many is it? It's 15 that are filled, that we are working right now with the pipeline committee comprised of the HR office, someone from the budget office, Yvette Carter, and others to work with those individuals to try to find positions between GRU and general government for them to be offered. There's no guarantee, but we are working on that, and there could be a few other opportunities within GPD as we continue to look at that budget. But right now, of those positions that were associated with the juvenile justice and community support programs headed by Chief Jones, there will be programs specifically designed for the summer for those young men. I know that Ms. Carter has been working on those programs with Park Recreation and Cultural Affairs, Teen Works, and some other programs that we have, working directly with the staff in juvenile justice to make sure that we have programming over the summer for those young men. And specifically working with the pipeline committee for those individuals whose positions will be impacted or eliminated effective October 1, trying to make sure that we can figure out if there are opportunities not only in the city, and that includes GRU, but with the State Department of Juvenile Justice. They have 11 positions. They've come to town. They've met with Chief Jones. They've met with several of the young men to see if we can make sure that they have those opportunities. But that's where we are with this program. It has not been driven by a lack of money. It has just simply been driven by a lack of ability to, quite frankly, get past audit findings. And that's where we are with this.
All right. Is there no more questions?
There are questions.
Okay.
Yes. Good.
I'm not going
Commissioner
forward
Buck.
anymore without asking.
Commissioner Buck, and I think this will go back a few slides.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Barbell, I appreciate it. So a similar question that we've talked about for a couple of the other areas. For the 380 positions which are currently considered for fiscal year 2024, I think the vast majority of these, if not almost 100% of them, are within our bargaining units. Is that accurate? There's very few that may not be in a bargaining unit amongst the
Well, they have some non-representative professionals, but as you know, the command staff are not part of a bargaining unit, captain and above. Plus, you know, their normal map, so their crime analysts, Dimitri, they're non-represented. But you're right. I would say 95% of these FTEs are covered by one of the public safety or CWA contracts.
All right, so then that locks us in, and so if we look at the fiscal year 2024 proposed in salaries and benefits, most of that's coming through what we already have as pre-agreed bargaining units and salary and benefits, and that's to the tune of roughly $4.5 million, which is the vast majority of the increase in this particular budget area.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, you can draw a direct line from 23 to 24 proposed, just applying the terms and conditions of the collective bargaining agreements.
Okay. I know that at a preceding report from Gainesville Police, we talked about the vacancies and the recruiting and the chief, and I know that there's a number of those, and I would assume kind of a nationwide trend that in spite of our best efforts, we're going to end up having lapsed salary dollars through fiscal year 2024, that there's no way, even in spite of our best efforts, we're going to make. We just have no idea what those are going to look like. That's more of a comment. I mean, I'm looking at your mind kind of world there, but
this is from from my budget perspective. Yes, those vacancies are persistent. They've been persistent, but you have to have a minimum staffing for patrol, and those slots are filled with people who are paid time and a half. So Part of that is going to be covered through the increase in the OT line, the overtime line, recognizing that we have to provide that level of service.
No, I do recognize that the overtime rate to fill the vacancies that you cannot fill to staff at appropriate level are going to take away many of those lapsed salaries. There's no doubt, the lapsed dollars. But it's not going to, chances are it's not going to equalize. And so that really just leads me to talk about the fact that as we go through the year, whether it's fiscal year, even this particular fiscal year, while we have a few months, it'd be helpful as we get these kind of regular quarterly reports, Madam Manager, to the extent that we're able to figure out what those lapsed dollars look like, subtracting the expenses that we incur to provide a thing will be helpful, and will be especially helpful for fiscal year 2024, on a quarterly basis. And that's what I would ask us, because it will give us an idea of where we're at, both on the hiring and recruitment and retention, but it'll also give us an idea of where we're at budget. And unfortunately, those are both very, very critical. My last comment would simply be that, I know that we're aggressive on our grant management, and there are grant funding streams federally and state through juvenile justice and DOJ and even the Department of Ed. And sometimes merely because we're not looking for specific funding streams, we may lose out on a solicitation. And most solicitations are typically between February and the end of the summer. This is where we're asking to do something to try and maintain, to basically get funding streams. But whoever we have on staff, Madam Manager, throughout the organization, but specifically under your area, that is looking for specific funding sources that may make up, not just here in GPD, but some of these other areas, we need to be looking for them so that we don't miss those very short solicitation windows, which are typically between 30 and 60 days. Because you miss it, we've missed out on it for an entire fiscal year. And right now is where those come down, and they're short notice, and we either act on them or not. So this may be offer the opportunity for dollars, not just in this particular department, but across all our departments. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wanted to thank Commissioner Book for bringing up the issue of grants. I want to kind of circle back and ask a question about BOLD. So, brave, overt leaders of distinction, I need just a little bit of clarity about the target audience. Thank you, Chief Jones.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, we have a new director, Mr. Diamond Smith, and what Mr. Smith come to us after retiring, he came back, and what he's targeting, he widened the net a little bit, and only in the sense that we are targeting those individuals that have been previously criminally justice involved. That's the number one thing that we're doing. But we're also targeting young people 18 to 26, or I think he moved to 28, that have multiple risk factors in their life. And I think statistics will show you from the Department of Justice, if you don't have the family, you don't have the education, you're unemployed, you may have ran with a group that are doing, it's not delinquent, but criminal activity, there's a high probability, unless you put protective factors in their life, that they're going to engage in some type of criminal activity. He went from, I think last night he reported at the Porter's Church, he has 45 members in the program at this present time, and he's working, as you see, with the staff of himself, 2 intervention specialists and a staff assistant.
Thank you for that. Can you give us a little more detail about what the program does?
The program.
Because here's the thing, Chief. What I personally need, and what I think might be helpful for others, be it members on this dais or be it members of the community, is to show us the distinction between the Reichert House and BOLD.
Most definitely. First of all, age. Reichert House was pretty much designed for adolescents, young people up to 18 years of age. And when we went to BOLD, BOLD was for those initially 18 to 24 years of age that have been involved in the criminal justice system. And you're doing wraparound services. You're doing case management with these individuals to try to steer them in the right direction where they can be productive citizens within this community. I'd be happy to have him, because he got a new one, with the manager's consent, to come out and do a presentation. He did one last night at Shady Grove, and it was very, very impressive.
Okay. Yeah, I did hear about that kind of on the back end. I wish I would have known about that beforehand, because I certainly would have come out.
Yes, ma'am.
So 45 youth that are currently in.
No, not youth. They're
Okay,
adults.
45 adults,
Yes.
18 to 28. That's right. I did
Yes,
hear you
ma'am.
say that. 18 to 28,
Yes, ma'am.
correct?
Unless I think he has one or two that the courts have declared that they got them from the Department of Correction, that they are declared adults by virtue of the crime that they have committed. So I think he has a couple of them on the caseload.
Okay. And what are the positions that are filled underneath the BOLD program?
They have the director, and you have what you call an outreach or individuals intervention specialist, and a staff assistant. That's it. And many volunteers. Got to have volunteers to be successful with that few staff.
Okay. Do you know if Diamond is applying for any grants?
I'm personally writing some of the grants. Yes, I am. What he said, I got one due June the 12th. Yes, ma'am. We're writing. We're definitely seeking whatever grants that are out there.
Do you think, Chief Jones, these positions, and I just want to kind of cut really to the core of this, are these positions qualified to do the work that needs to be done to reach this particular demographic? I'm not asking that to be.
Yeah, I understand.
I want to make sure that we have, if there is a psychiatrist, if there's a psychiatric need, or if there, because I'm looking at things like outreach specialist and staff assistant. They seem very basic, very kind of city-oriented things. That's the way we title our positions. But when I look at the needs of this particular population, and I think the work that
Yes.
you're trying to do, my concern becomes if they are staffed in the way to get the job done.
Well, what we do is partnerships.
Okay.
Because you don't have mental health counselors on staff, but you do have partnership with the services. And what you try to do is steer the consumer of the program to the appropriate services. When we talk about the individuals that are the intervention specialists, they were interrupters. So they definitely came and they know some of the ins and outs of the street. And so they were able to, with some training, they were able to hit the streets real quick and began to provide services for them. They were out in the trenches for about a year and a half, 2 years, as interrupters in Gainesville. And so, yes, ma'am, I think we got some highly qualified individuals that could make those connections with organizations that can provide those services, like education. They're not educators, but Santa Fe, they work with Santa Fe to make sure that those kids, young people, I'm not going to say kids, those individuals get to the right person so that they can go and cover their education, jobs, the same thing. Yes.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned interrupters. Are they cut?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Some of them are folded into the BOLD program?
Two
Is that
of
what I'm
them.
hearing?
Two of them are. Two of them are folded into the BOLD program, and so those are the intervention specialists that we were able to retain, and they have a unique knowledge of what is needed in Gainesville. And they also are trained in something called moral recognition therapy. They're certified in that. And this is a therapy that makes a person think before they act. They don't do just things impulsive. And it's something like a 16-week, I think, program that they put them through. And it's evidence-based, and it's shown that it is highly effective. You can Google it and look it up. It's very effective. So those two individuals bring not only that, but conflict mediation. When you look at a lot of the homicides in the United States right now, Yeah, some of it is retaliation or whatever, but a lot of it starts from quarreling, just arguing. So how do you teach individuals conflict resolutions? And so they are trained in those things. So they bought some things, mental health first aid. They bought a number of things that they picked up as in training as an interrupter to the office in working with the BOLD program.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, if I might ask Chief Jones to differentiate between those that are funded with the grant that ends in June?
Yes, ma'am. That we do have a grant that will end in June the 30th. So we're desperate. There's another grant that Mr. Alexander's working on right now to try to refund those positions, but it will not be June the 30th. I think it's more like a fall.
Refund the interrupters positions?
Yeah, these are the interrupters positions that are out there on the street right now. They're a state-funded position, and that grant automatically sunset. June the 30th.
Okay.
And how many active positions, Chief? I just want to clarify because I don't want confusion between.
So that would when you look at the vacancies in there, 4 positions, 4 part-times. You don't do full-times, 4 part-time positions. Yes, ma'am.
4 part-time positions.
And the interrupters.
And the interrupters.
Yes.
That you are applying for a grant to see if you can support financially.
Yes, but it will, if we are successful, and I'll put a big if in it, it won't be until this fall before we know that they are actually awarded. But they have did a great task for us and this community.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So if awarded, how much longer would that give you in the program? It would provide
I have to
funding
look
for
at the parameters of the grant. I don't want to quote something false up here, but some of them are 1 year, some of them are 3 years. I know the one with juveniles is a 3-year grant with OJJDP. And so that's a 3-year grant, but this one, between 1 and 3 years, I feel comfortable in saying that.
Okay, all right. Thank you for making that distinction, because my question was going to be, will the work of that program continue? But I think you've answered it, and I certainly look forward to hearing about whether or not you all receive the grant.
So do I.
When will we know?
I have to look at the timeline, but generally on those, I know the OJJDP one will probably be October.
Okay.
That will be October. I think this one around early fall.
Okay.
Early fall.
All right. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
I conclude.
Thank you, Commissioner Duncan Walker. Commissioner Willetts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have some questions, some numbers that I want to get into, and maybe probably Mr. Barlow. Slide 7, the increase in Police District 1, $3 million without, I must have missed that somewhere. Can we describe that?
I am pretty sure that's where a lot of the overtime is loaded, because that, I believe, is the district that has the big vacancies, isn't it?
Yes. District 1, the overtime usage in that is going to be higher than District 2. And District 2 is like a catch-all, quite frankly, with some of the staffing. But you note that the percentage increase for District 1 is higher, and that's in part because we have a higher propensity for using overtime there, because that area in particular includes an area that has a high demand for services. So more folks are called in to do overtime to have the minimum staffing to make sure we can put people out in and around the zones.
Okay, and then maybe I didn't quite understand that we had perhaps more vacancies in District 1 than District 2?
Yes.
And then overtime, okay. And my second question was just, and I think I know the answer, is that part of what we're seeing an increase, though Mr. Barbell said there is a direct line between just increased salaries because of labor agreements, those contracts. But then there's this weird budgeting some of our overtime right now as opposed to a true up later, right? Okay, I don't think I caught that in this presentation. I kind of knew this was coming.
Yes.
We talked about it with GFR, but I want to make sure we.
The same thing is occurring here. Thank you for that, because that's why I pushed my mic. The same thing that occurred in GFR occurs in GPD as well. The overtime is trued up at the end. And we have budgeted on the front end here. And so you will see an increase, a substantial increase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of that.
So, Mr. Mayor, I did actually mention that. I
There
didn't
was-
say the dollar amount though.
There was a lot
in your benefit.
and it's not written.
Right.
And
it's,
so
it's
when
$1.5 million was the addition to their
Got it.
previously budgeted overtime. That quite frankly was a fake number. Okay, so
perfect. And we've talked about it, but I just needed that kind of talked about while we look at this slide in particular, right? So this is helping me. And on this slide as well, I do have I may have missed it partially because I need it when I'm looking at it written. I need it written right next to it. Please support services reduction of 1.5 million. That's because it's. What was that reduction?
It's the vehicles,
come on. There's our detail guy.
the different vehicles were in the past all in support services, but now they're broken out into different cost centers, which is why you also see increases there and a decrease in support services.
Okay, and then on the same vein, now technology has its own line. That's why it was previously.
Technology was prior under strategic planning, so that cost center moved to GPD, and the total is 1.22 million extra that was added to our budget because of that.
Great. Some of those big numbers are about moving just where we're accounting for things, and that makes me feel, a lot better. And then also in the police training unit, what was the big increase on that?
Probably fleet again, right? But no training. It's probably as they used to centralize their fleet costs and they're now splitting them out to cost centers. So.
Okay, and I can understand that in general, but that is a very large. So is that because there's a lot of vehicles in police training unit?
So that's what incorporates the training for new officers. When we hire a new officer, the whole process of sending them to the academy, the cost for that, training for our personnel as far as certifications and things along those lines. So we had been deficit in that, and a lot of this reflects what we've been actually spending prior. And it may have it budgeted at a certain level, but what we previously spent, when you go back and look at a 3 to 5 year analysis, we were spending more than what we had budgeted. So this is basically truing it up and getting to the point where we're reflecting what our actual training costs are. Again, because we're going into nuances with technology and making sure our people are trained in that, trying to stay ahead of the game as far as some of the things you see on a national level where lack of training causes major incidents. So we emphasize the training that we take our personnel through. We bring people here sometimes, but sometimes we have to send our folks out for the training. But that combined with the fact that we have more new people that we hire, we have to pay for them to go to the academy to be trained, and we have to make all of that investment in them. That's where the additional cost is occurring.
All right, I still have a little question about that because training has been something, my limited experience know that it's been a long-term value of GPD. Mm-hmm. This isn't suddenly a new training. Right. Long-term value and long-term commitment and putting our money where our mouth is. But that number is still very large. And so but the adopted budget, that would have included any additional budget amendments during the year, correct? No, or this did not include any.
Okay.
This has been an experience working with the GPD budget, because when the 2-year budgets, the second-year budget really has not been reviewed as we have reviewed it now from a zero-based. You would normally take a budget, a projection, and use the projection to be the base for your New Year's budget, and for whatever reason, it wasn't happening. The budgets were not developed that way. We started from zero, we looked at what was spent last year, projected it out, and that's what you basically get for your fiscal year 24 number, which may be vastly different from what is in fiscal year 23. But what you see there is what they have been spending trend-wise over time. This is an accurate, more accurate, I'll put it that way, reflection of what they need.
Okay, so more towards more as accurate, not we hope we fill everything this year, and so we're going to be spending a lot more on training than overtime because we're going to train, we're going to get to 100%, you know.
I've cut through the Gordian knot. So the 23 FTE counts were pulled off position control as of when we started doing the budget process. If you looked at the actual 22 FTEs and 23 at the beginning of the year, there were fewer. So they have more officers assigned into the training unit than they did in 23. And that's reflected largely in the salary, wages, and benefit. It is up $800,000 from 22 actuals. So it is a reallocation of officer or of employees to that unit has had it. My guess is they've always been involved in training. They've just been charged in different cost centers. So this is aligning cost with the service provided from that cost center.
Okay. And then I had a question about juvenile justice and community support programs. The sentiment I hear is that, particularly, Riker House in particular, is that this is a response to JLACs and the audit findings, and that it's not due to a lack of money or funds, but we previously spent funds, and these services, I'm concerned that at some point down the line that we're just going to be, concerned's the wrong word. I'm aware that potentially some of these services, there's an interest to fund in different ways, not inside of Reichert House, not obviously within juvenile justice and community support programs, perhaps not in GPD, but to fund similar type services and to accomplish the goal and the task. And so have there been conversations about that, or maybe this is part of that conversation of just because we say we cut it here, in the end, are we going to find that it is still a commitment of this city to achieve some of those goals?
I would agree it is an important program. The services are critical. For the last month, we have been meeting with community partners, Darry Lloyd specifically from the state attorney's office, but also representing Black on Black and some other community-based organizations. He has taken the lead along with representatives from the school board, the Children's Trust. They have not made a hard commitment because there's an application process that has to be gone through in order to secure those funds. But they are all at the table. I spoke with Mr. Lloyd today. He feels very confident that they will have a program that will roll out for the fall school term that will provide after-school care program for young people that were served by Reichert House. They're working on that. They're very diligent about it. I would hope that at some point when they present themselves to the city that we will be able to provide at least some resources, be they facilities or vehicles or whatever it is that, they request. But there clearly is a role for the city going forward. I just can't speak specifically to it right now. But
this is an area I feel like we have a little uncertainty because just the nature of what it is. But
it is, but clearly it is.
We cut it from here, on the juvenile justice, not on this slide. And people might suddenly be thinking, look, we are going to save X dollars. And I don't know, there's a potential that is not completely accurate, that we may save it kind of in this budget line. It may show up in a different budget line. And
it is a dollar savings, there's no way around it. I'm sorry. There is a dollar savings here, there's no way around not
putting it in this budget, yeah.
Mm-hmm. As you look at it as a part of GPD's core service, but the services provided are clearly needed in the community, and we would hope that the city would continue to play a role somewhere in the future of that partnership that is being discussed right now to carry the program forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Manager. And I conclude. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Willetts. Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Barbell, our chief, could you tell me how much does it cost to train a police officer, to put them through the training? And how many did we train last year?
Yeah, to send them to the academy typically for the tuition and stuff, I think it's around $6,000 to $7,000 right now. for the tuition.
Okay.
But we have to hire them, and we're paying them typically, I think it's about $38,000 or $40,000 while they're going through the training.
Okay.
On an annual basis. That's what the salary equates to. In addition to that, we have the cost of the equipment that we have to provide. So we provide them everything from uniforms to their guns to everything that they utilize. We provide that information, provide that equipment. So I would say to train one person, this is a swag at this point. I shouldn't say that. This is a guess that you're looking at somewhere between $40,000 to $60,000 for the training cost for that.
Okay, thank you. I thought you were going to say.
And that's per person. And if you look at, when you see the police training unit here, you see that cost. When we have a person that's in the police academy, that person would be assigned to that training unit. So you'll see an increase in the cost because we had 10 or 12 people that were in the police academy. So their salaries will be attached to the training unit. That really explains part of the increase that you have there. If we're not training folks, if we're not sending a lot of folks to the police academy, that number isn't as large as it is. But the more people we send, the higher that cost is going to be.
Okay, and so let's say we trained 20 people last year?
In the police academy, we had 12, and I think a second group of 6.
So 18?
About 18 people.
All right, and then how many of those stayed with us, are still with us?
Ooh, my guess at this point is probably about 12 of those people may still be with us.
Well, here's where I'm going with this. Is there any way to retrieve part of our investment?
Oh, we do.
We do?
We have a contract that's signed, and you have to work with us for 2 years. If you fail to do that, then you have to reimburse us for the cost of the academy. We can't recoup the salaries, but we can recoup the amount it costs us to provide that training to you.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's very helpful.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. Commissioner Duncan Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going back just really quickly to the conversation about young people, and this is not specifically about Reichert House or Bowl, but I want to ask the city manager if she can speak to what the function of the Youth Services Department will be.
In the Parks Department, they will continue to work with partners like the Y and Boys Club. I'm coming up with partners because I don't know specifically. I know they're working with the Y, but I know they're working with recreation programs and with the Y. Can you add to that, Yvette? I wish Cherie was here so she could speak to it, but I
To do what? Do you know what they do, Madam Curry? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I will be speaking a little bit on the fly as well. My understanding is there is a strong partnership with YMCA to provide after-school services. For instance, even summer services, the midnight basketball they partner with. There are other league programs, the sports leagues programs that they partner, they meaning Parks, Rec, and Cultural Affairs. I am not 100% certain of all of the partnerships. They do have a partnership with the Duval neighborhood. Well, I'm going to say it wrong, but the Mr. Miles's group in Duval. I believe they have similar partnerships with other neighborhood organizations. I don't know all of them, but I do know that Ms. Kelly has been working in her capacity to use her connections that she had previously to ensure that the work that that the Youth Services Division does, it covers all lines.
I'm just trying to have a clear understanding of what that work is. So what does the Youth Services Department do? After school programming and?
There's the sports, the athletic programming. Those are the two that I'm certain of. They have the after-school care, the sports leagues. I am not certain beyond that.
I got you. And we can make
can
sure
bring that back
happens.
to
I
you.
mean, Parks will be here at probably the next time we meet, and they can be obviously more specific about it, but we can get that information to you very easily.
Thank you very much, because I am particularly interested in knowing what that is. I know it's a brand-new department, and we have a lot of latitude there, which is exciting to me. But I'm also curious as to where we are budgetarily with it and what we're having to cut. Do we know what we're cutting from that yet?
That will come forth, what's the date of that meeting, Steve?
Okay,
May
so
25th?
we'll,
May 25th.
we'll hear that on the 25th. All right. Because I think there's room for conversation about that. I think a lot of us, thank you, Yvette, on the dais are clearly concerned about ways to address the youth. And it's a new department. I'm really curious to hear the direction that it's headed in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deckelmark. Commissioner Willetts.
Commissioner, just to be clear, we have 3 frozen positions in that division right now, correct, Madam Manager? Youth services, those were, I just remember that I thought those were the first, in essence, what I remember saying, the first 3. One was social emotional, something learning. I thought in youth services.
We can speak to, do you have that sheet? Do you? You don't have it, we didn't bring it.
Because it's part of that conversation of like, what do they do? Well, right now, we have I think we've frozen 3 of those positions.
Yeah, the management position's the only one that's been filled.
I thought when it was $750,000 that had been allocated by this commission for the last couple of years, they had been slow in trying to get the program going. They purchased a bus, they purchased a director, that's Cherie Kelly, but I don't think they have, when I say purchased, they hired, but I don't believe. Wow. But I don't believe they hired any of the other positions.
Right, so there's.
Is that correct?
We came with the budget amendment to add 3 positions, and the commission decided not to add them at that time, so they.
There you go.
Other FTEs, so they only have the 1 FTE.
And
As far as people go, I just wanted to mention that because this is part of this conversation about budget and the effects of what we're talking about. And so even the big dreams, some of it's, I mean, they're not doing it yet because they're not yet there outside of management, and then obviously some of the community partners, some of the funds are probably going. But I just wanted to mention that in our first round of some of this, I remember it was Finance Committee. I remember particularly we already talked. We're like, hey, this appears to be kind of some of the first evidence of the hard times to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I see no further lights up here. Call one more time. Go ahead.
I can have let's advance the slide. I think we're at the summary. There's a summary slide, and it's just kind of remind you this is what we've gone through to date, and these are we've gone through 2 operating areas. Public safety, we thought it made sense to get them out of the way in the order, not get them out of the way, but attack them in the order. All right. The fire rescue was associated with the assessment, and now we have had GPD and the charter officers. As I said, you will have operating departments, direct service departments, other than public safety. On the 25th, that's sustainable development, PRCA, public works, transportation and mobility. Oh, yes, and housing. It's been a long 3-4 weeks. I apologize. I'm not going to lie to you all, though. So that is it. All right.
Commissioner Chestnut.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So when you bring those budgets forward, based on the line of questioning today, it would be helpful if you identify up front which ones are CWA positions, so that we have that information and we can see where management falls and where the labor falls. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chestnut. So I don't see any other lights. Thank you, all staff, for all your effort today, and to all the charters for the enormous effort that has gone into this. And thank you to my colleagues for your attention this afternoon and your questions. I would encourage everyone to follow up with the appropriate charter officers with questions. This is an iterative process. It is a process we're not going to finish until later this summer. But don't be shy about asking the questions and going through all the backup. And we will see you all tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Yeah.